time I ever had. It was thrilling to know I was one of 40 astronauts getting ready to board rockets that would take us to Mars to build the first permanent home on another planet. I hadn't slept well for months because I couldn't stop thinking about all the exciting things I would soon experience. There was so much to do in the years ahead, and I was eager to begin. But it was hard to accept that I was leaving Earth behind. I thought about the wonderful hikes I'd taken in the Rocky Mountains, the scuba dives where I explored colorful coral reefs, the camping trips around the world, and the summer I spent on a sailboat showing tourists around the Caribbean. How could I leave this beautiful planet? Mainly, I thought of my girlfriend, Carol Walker, and that we were spending our last night together. Carol was with me at the going-away party for the Mars crew, where everyone tried to focus on our adventure and not on what we were leaving. "I feel sorry for that couple," Carol said, pointing to two people nearby. Adeline Remy, a botanist, was set to create a greenhouse for our food on Mars. She was with Claude Voland, who held her closely as she quietly cried. I knew Adeline from our astronaut training together, and I was aware that she and Claude had been together since their days in graduate school in Paris. Like Carol and me, Adeline and Claude were saying goodbye for what felt like forever. Many relationships were ending that night, and Adeline was especially heartbroken because she and Claude had planned to get married and start a family. Then she got selected for the Mars mission, which she couldn't turn down. My relationship with Carol was newer and less serious, but I knew I would miss her greatly. I couldn't imagine how hard this separation would be for Adeline. People often learn that Adeline and I eventually got married on Mars. We have been together since the beginning of our time there. But on that last night on Earth, we were just colleagues sharing a mix of excitement and sadness. Carol and I left the party early. We went to the astronaut training building and straight to my room because we wanted to share one more special moment together. "Carol, I've been thinking about something and I want to tell you," I said. "You are the first woman I've been with who makes me feel I could see a future with you. I've had nice relationships before, but I've never felt as comfortable as I do with you. If I wasn't leaving, I think I would have tried to convince you to marry me eventually," Mike said. Carol gave him a sad smile. "Mike, I've been avoiding saying the same thing to you all week. You know I love you. You know I'm committed to you. I just didn't think it was fair to bring up something like that when you're about to move to another planet. I wish we could stay together. I do believe we would have gotten married one day. But we both know that your opportunity to go to Mars is too big for you to miss. I'm sad for us, but I'm happy for you." After that, I don't really remember what else we talked about that night. What I do remember is that Carol and I held each other close. We wanted to make the most of our time together. This is the last time I'll be with Carol like this, I thought to myself. We kissed, shared moments of closeness, and I made sure to remember everything about her, from her smile to the warmth of her embrace. She had always taken good care of herself, staying strong and fit from her days as a college athlete. I admired her dedication to staying healthy. This is the last time I'll be this close to her, I thought as we spent our final night together. We had gone on so many hikes together, and I'd always admired how strong and capable she was, scrambling up hills with those firm, powerful legs. As I lay next to her, I couldn't help but think how much I'd miss these simple moments, just being by her side. In the quiet of the night, there was a shared understanding between us. We were saying goodbye in the only way we knew how, cherishing the last moments of being so close. We didn't need words anymore. The love we had was enough to fill the silence. Carol sighed softly, and we stayed in each other's arms until we both fell asleep. She gently ran her hand over my head, encouraging me to stay close to her. This is the last time I'll be this close to her, I thought to myself. The last time I'll hold on to these moments. I did my best to show her how much I cared, as we had done many times before. She moved slightly, letting me know she was enjoying our closeness. We shared quiet moments, and I felt her respond to me, her breath catching as she experienced the emotions we both shared. She laughed softly. "Did that just happen?" "Maybe," I said with a smile. "Sorry." "Don't be," I replied. "I love being close to you." We stayed together for a while longer, savoring the time we had left. I wanted to make sure she knew how much I would miss her, so I focused on every detail, knowing this was our final night together. We were in perfect sync, knowing each other so well after all this time. I moved closer and she looked at me with a sweet smile, pulling me in for a kiss. It felt like we could stay like that forever, sharing a moment that was both comforting and bittersweet. Eventually, we came even closer, and I felt the warmth of our connection as we moved together. She sighed softly, and I could tell how much the moment meant to her. We continued, both of us fully aware that this was our last chance to express how deeply we felt for each other. Every movement was deliberate, slow, and filled with care. After a while, I could sense her joy building again, her breath quickening as we moved in perfect harmony. It was a beautiful shared moment, one that neither of us would forget. She cried out softly as the feelings overwhelmed her, and I felt her body respond with pure emotion. Soon after, I too was overcome with emotion, and I felt myself reaching a peak. It was powerful, and the connection between us felt stronger than ever. We held each other tightly, neither wanting to let go. When it was over, we lay side by side, still wrapped in each other's arms. I kept her close, knowing this was our final time together, and I didn't want it to end. We stayed like that for a long time, just holding each other, sharing the comfort of being together for the last time. When I finally opened my eyes, I saw her looking at me with warmth. I guessed I must have looked the same to her. Neither of us wanted to sleep. We didn't want to waste our last few hours together. We lay in each other's arms for a long time. Then Carol gently touched me. When I started to respond, she moved lower, showing how much she cared. I realized this would be the last time Carol would be close to me like this. I felt a rush of emotions as she shifted to sit on top of me. She knew how much I loved watching her. I enjoyed being able to touch her lightly as she moved above me. I thought about how this was the last time I would see her like this. We had both already experienced our peaks, so we didn't rush. We wanted to hold on to this moment for as long as we could. Carol moved steadily, paying attention to every little motion, and it felt like we could stay like this forever. As her breathing grew deeper and quicker, I could feel her excitement building. She picked up the pace, becoming more intense, until the energy between us filled the room. Her happy sounds grew louder as she reached her peak. "Mike! Oh, Mickey!" she called out as it happened. By this point, we were so in tune with each other that our moments of joy came together. I didn't have much left in me, but I felt a rush of emotion as we shared that connection. Afterwards, Carol relaxed against me, and I hugged her close. We were both exhausted. After a few quiet moments, I finally spoke. "I love you," I whispered. "I love you too," she replied. "I'll miss you. I'll miss you too." When I woke up the next day, I felt Carol beside me. I took a moment to appreciate our closeness one last time. It was a mixture of happiness and sadness. Carol walked with me to the launch area, staying by my side until I reached the gate for my rocket. She reached into her bag and took out a book. "I got you a gift," she said. "I feel bad for not getting you anything," I replied. The book was a signed first edition of Ray Bradbury's classic science fiction story, The Martian Chronicles. It's one of my favorite books, written in the 1940s during a time when people still dreamed that there were thriving civilizations on Mars. That dream began to fade in the 1960s when spacecraft flew to Mars and showed us pictures of a dry, empty planet covered in craters, not rivers. "Where did you find this?" I asked, remembering being a 14-year-old boy reading that amazing story for the first time. "I know a rare bookseller who loves astronauts," Carol said. "He likes knowing this book will go to Mars one day." I was so grateful. "I can't thank you enough," I said. "You already have," Carol replied. Now, Carol is a grandmother and the principal of a high school in San Jose, California. She married a chemical engineer, and she says he made her very happy until he passed away from cancer 2 years ago. When I interviewed her for this book, she said she had always kept a secret from me. "Right before you were chosen for the Mars mission, I realized I wanted to marry you," she said. "Do you remember our camping trip in Yellowstone? I woke up one morning, and when I saw how peaceful you looked while you slept, I felt a rush of love. I knew I wanted to share my life with you." After we got home, I did what many young girls dream of. I imagined my name if we got married: Carol Russell, Mrs. Carol Russell, Mrs. Michael Russell. But then you were picked for the Mars mission, and I knew I couldn't say anything about my feelings. Mars was your fate. I loved you too much to try to stop you from going, so I stayed quiet and cried when you weren't around. Watching that rocket launch into the sky was really hard for me. I've had a wonderful life, a lovely husband, and a caring family. I have wonderful grandchildren. Still, I've always wondered what might have happened if you hadn't been such a perfect choice for one of the most important missions in history. What I remember most is holding that special book tightly as I kissed Carol before turning to leave. I couldn't help but look back at her one last time, and when I did, I saw tears in her eyes. We had both managed to hold back tears until that moment. Seeing Carol cry made me tear up too. This would be the last time I see Carol, I thought, as I turned away and looked at the huge rocket that would take me to Mars. I really dislike space. I really dislike it. I know I'm not supposed to say that. Some people think it's rude, unappreciative. So many people put in a lot of time, effort, and money to help me travel to Mars, so I feel it's important to say nothing negative about the experience. I am very thankful for the chance to go to Mars. I can't fully express how grateful I am. However, I believe it's time to be honest about how hard it can be to spend a long time in weightlessness during a 7-month journey from Earth to Mars. It can be quite frustrating, and I often found it challenging. Media stories make weightlessness look like the best fun ever. You might see videos where people are floating and look super happy when they first experience it. I admit the first hour of weightlessness was enjoyable. But after that, it became a real challenge, making everyday tasks difficult and uncomfortable. My journey to Mars began with an exciting ride into orbit. We felt a strong force pushing us back into our seats for a brief moment. Once we reached orbit, our rocket connected with a refueling ship. We all got out of our seats and took off our spacesuits, enjoying the feeling of floating. Out of the 40 people on board, only our commander, Captain Elke Brandt, had been to space before. The rest of us were new to this. We were warned that we might feel a bit sick at first. I didn't get too sick, but a few people did, and it didn't smell great. Those who felt the worst tried hard to keep everything contained in their bags, with mixed results. Our rocket was fully automatic, and while it was possible to take manual control, we never needed to. Spacecraft design has come so far that they hardly ever break down. While robotic ships made our journey safer, they also meant we had a lot of time with nothing to do from launch to landing. This made the trip feel very long and boring. With so much time to think, I noticed how uncomfortable I felt. I had trouble with digestion during the trip. The doctor suggested some options, which made using the zero-gravity toilet quite a challenge. I also lost my appetite during the journey. Experienced astronauts say it's very important to eat regularly to avoid health issues like bone loss and low blood volume. Most of my meals felt more like chores, and I had to force myself to eat food I didn't enjoy, just like many astronauts in past missions. As the journey went on, I started to notice some vision issues that astronauts sometimes face during long flights. Eyes tend to change shape without gravity, making it hard to see clearly. I really disliked that. It was uncomfortable, but thankfully that problem went away once we landed on Mars. We had just one main job, to exercise. I enjoy working out, but the exercises that work best in space need complicated machines that use bands to mimic lifting weights. I'd much rather go for runs, swim, bike on beautiful trails, and do many other activities that you can't do in space. Those machines got boring very quickly. I usually listen to music or podcasts to make the experience bearable. In the first few days, I often felt sad about how abruptly my relationship with Carol ended. I ended up reading and rereading the book she gave me when I left. I love the way old books look, feel, and smell. I spent a lot of time enjoying the experience of flipping through pages made of paper and reading the printed words. It represented everything I was leaving behind, especially my feelings for Carol. The one nice part of the trip was getting to know the other astronauts better. We had trained together, so we were somewhat familiar, but this journey gave us a chance for long, relaxed talks to learn more about each other. "Is that a real book?" asked my colleague Adeline Remy when she saw me reading my gift. At that moment, I didn't know it would lead to a deeper connection with her, who would later become my girlfriend and someday my wife. "It certainly is," I said, showing her the cover. "The Martian Chronicles," she said. "I know that author. I read a book by Ray Bradbury when I was a kid, but I can't remember the title." "What was it about?" I asked. It was about a society where books were banned. It was pretty scary, Adeline replied. That sounds like Fahrenheit 451, I said. It's a great book and has been made into movies 3 times. They are all really good. What's your book about? She asked. It's about the colonization of Mars. Very fitting, she said. Is it good? It's one of the best books I've ever read, I replied. It was published a long time ago, but it tells a beautiful story. How long ago? She asked. I checked the title page. 1950, I said. 1950. Wow, Adeline said. How old is the copy you're holding? It's a first edition. Look, I said, showing her Bradbury's autograph that said, Mars is Heaven. A signed first edition? She asked, surprised. Yes, I said. It looks very good for being that old. They made books with better materials back then. Better paper, ink, and bindings. I plan to wrap it up and keep it safe once I finish rereading it. But a gift like this is meant to be enjoyed, I said. Adeline smiled. That's a very French way of thinking, she replied. Should I take that as a compliment? I asked. She smiled again. Yes, I meant it as a compliment. Do you think I should read that book? Absolutely, I said. You can borrow it whenever you want. Right now, if you'd like. I've read it at least 10 times. Oh, no, I wouldn't want to risk damaging it. I'll read a copy on my tablet, she answered. I'm sure we have a digital version in our library, I said. I bet we have almost everything ever written about Mars, I added. I have a question for you. Why do French people say sacre bleu? What makes blue sacred? That's an easy one, she replied. For a long time, many French people used the phrase sacre Dieu as an expression of surprise. Those who don't want to say the Lord's name just say sacre bleu. It sounds similar, so people know it's a nicer way of saying the same thing. It's like how some Americans say gosh darn instead of the other phrase. Same idea, just less harsh. I'm not American, I said. I grew up in Canada. Adeline smiled again. I think I like you a bit more now, she said. At that moment, I noticed she was smiling a lot. It felt like she was being a bit flirtatious. That seemed strange, since Adeline was still sad about her breakup with Claude, the man she had left on Earth. I thought she was just being friendly, knowing we all would be living very close together for the next few years. We needed to get along and be friendly. Now I realize I was mistaken. Adeline was indeed being flirtatious. When I spoke to her later for this book, she said, "Of course I was flirting. If you had been born in France, you would understand without me explaining." When I asked how she could flirt so soon after her breakup, Adeline said, "I'm quite good at reading situations. I was on a crew with 32 women and 8 men. I didn't want to stay alone while on Mars, so I chatted with all the men. I wanted to find a partner quickly because I knew if I didn't act fast, others would take all the best options." This explains one reason why relationships on Mars were so different from those on Earth. There were many more women than men. Adeline and the other women realized there weren't enough men for everyone. Over time, we understood that we would need to find a way to deal with this situation. Adeline wasn't the only woman acting quickly to form connections. During the 7-month journey to Mars, I found myself having many close conversations with the women on our crew. I might have understood things sooner if I'd been born in France, but even someone like me from Canada eventually realized that my female co-workers were comparing us men as they got to know us. It was hard for me to think about love so soon after losing Carol, but I appreciated all the attention during a long and dull trip. I enjoyed being around women who were eager to learn more about me, but I only got close to one person, Adeline. There were a couple of reasons for that. First, Adeline is a truly amazing woman. She is very skilled and determined. Once she decided she wanted me as her boyfriend, she succeeded almost immediately. Also, she had a charming French accent that caught my attention right away. She was attractive, and one special thing about Adeline was the enthusiasm she showed when she spoke. We all shared a strong excitement about the idea of building a lasting home on Mars, but none of us expressed that excitement quite like Adeline. There's a common idea about French people, saying they have deeper feelings and great insights. While I know stereotypes aren't fair, Adeline fits that idea very well, which is one reason I eventually proposed to her. The second reason I didn't pursue anyone else was because it's really hard to be close to someone in space. Adeline and I tried, quite a bit, but It just didn't work out well. For a long time, people have believed that couples in space might have incredible experiences, but the reality is very different. It's nearly impossible to connect when you're floating in zero gravity. Just think about it. In a traditional position, one partner is on top of the other. Gravity helps them stay together and move, but in space, both people end up drifting apart. How is that enjoyable? This isn't talked about much, but astronauts have known the truth for years. In the 1990s, some astronaut trainees wanted to find out what it might be like to be intimate in space. They did some tests in a big pool at the Johnson Space Center where astronauts practice spacewalks. It simulates how it feels to move around in space. 2 astronauts wanted to see if they could mimic the motions of intimacy while in spacesuits. The conclusion? It just doesn't work. They found out that with a third person helping, it might be possible, but the whole process was so awkward that someone would have to be really determined to even try. And this is where I have to admit that Adeline and I were very determined. We gave it our best shot, over and over. Since the name of this book is How to Live on Mars, I feel like I should share what Adeline and I experienced after we decided to become closer. But let me warn you, we didn't have much success. On the way to Mars, we slept in tiny bunks, cramped into cubicles with just a curtain for privacy. Sleeping in space can be hard, and a lot of people have trouble falling asleep. Another reason I wasn't a fan of the trip. But at least we had our own little space. Still, it wasn't big enough for much when Adeline and I tried to get close. When we tried lying next to each other, it quickly became clear that we kept bumping around in the tight space. The bunks had straps we used to keep ourselves in place while we slept so we wouldn't float away. We tried strapping Adeline in and holding each other close, but it was almost impossible to make things work. We were doing our best, but it felt like every attempt was met with more frustration. Imagine it. Adeline and I were together in that small space, wanting to be close, but it just didn't happen the way we hoped. We tried different ways to hold on to each other, but there simply wasn't enough room. We even tried a different approach, with Adeline leaning forward while I tried holding on, but again, the space was too tight. We couldn't make it work, no matter how much we wanted to. One thing came close to working. After trying different ways, we figured out that if I stayed in one spot and she held on to me, we could almost make it work. She put her hands on the ceiling for balance, and I held her hips, pulling her towards me. For a brief moment, it felt like we were finally getting somewhere. But the small space made it impossible for her to keep going long enough for either of us to feel satisfied. We tried many different ways to make it work, but nothing ever really did. Years later, someone invented a way to use harnesses with stretchy bands to help, but we didn't have access to anything like that. Our attempts to be close in the way we had hoped just didn't succeed. Since regular physical closeness wasn't possible, we found other ways to connect. We strapped ourselves into the bunk, and Adeline helped me relax. To return the favor, I gently massaged her, making sure she felt cared for. I remember the first time we tried this, it felt like a relief. We had so much built-up tension, and it was a great feeling to finally find a way to ease it. We had to take turns, given the tight space. I would usually focus on making her feel good, carefully finding ways to help her relax and reach that sense of calm. "I'm getting close," she said excitedly the first time, happy that we had found something that worked. Her excitement grew as she muttered a few words in French, which I found charming. "Oh, Michel, enfin," she sighed, trying her best to stay quiet. Adeline always had a way of making even the smallest moments feel special, though I was sure that the others nearby probably heard us. Keep in mind, the only thing separating us from the rest of the crew was a thin privacy curtain. It blocked the view but didn't do much to muffle sound. No one ever said anything, but the looks we got afterward made it clear that they knew what was going on. By this point, I had already spoken with a few others on the crew who were interested in getting closer to me, and I could sense some disappointment when they realized I was committed to Adeline. After I helped Adeline feel good, it was her turn to do the same for me. We couldn't be too creative due to the space limitations, but she found a simple way to help me relax. Given the small quarters, we couldn't really try anything else, so we kept things straightforward. Adeline would softly whisper to me in French, helping me relax more as she gently took care of me. The first time we tried, I was so tense that it didn't take long for her to help me feel better. "I'm almost there," I said, letting her know it was time. We had to be careful, though, since cleaning up in a weightless environment would be tricky. Adeline grabbed a sock and used it to keep things tidy. She continued until I finally felt a wave of relief wash over me. I'm done, I sighed with a sense of release. It had been a long time since I'd felt that kind of relaxation, and I couldn't believe how much tension I had. When it was over, Adeline laughed softly, saying, "Mon Dieu," as she carefully took care of the sock, making sure everything was handled neatly. "Feeling better, my love?" she asked with a smile. "Much better," I replied. Much, I said. We kept doing this almost every day during the trip. I can't say for anyone else, but whenever I start a new relationship, I feel really strong emotions for my partner. I want to be close to them all the time, every day, as often as I can. I felt that way about Adeline. But there was another reason I wanted to be with her. Our days were mostly empty. We had no tasks to do except get at least 2 hours of exercise each day. Most of us watched movies or listened to music, but the rest of the time we felt bored. I needed something special to fill my time, and nothing felt better than spending time with my wonderful partner. We talked a lot. We shared meals. We looked into each other's eyes and sat side by the observation window. We watched Mars get larger and brighter as we got closer. I even read my favorite book, The Martian Chronicles, to Adeline during our long journey through space. We dreamed about how amazing it would be to finally stand on a planet with enough gravity to enjoy our time together. Little did we know, we were about to find something even more amazing than we could ever imagine. A long time ago, when Bradbury signed my copy of The Martian Chronicles, he wrote, "Mars is heaven." He chose this because it's the title of a short story that became part of his book. By then, Adeline and I both knew this book well, but we had no idea how incredible our discovery would be. Every crew member had a reason to celebrate when we finally landed on Mars. I was tired of feeling unwell. Weightlessness made my body feel strange. I was also tired of spending hours working out on those uncomfortable exercise machines. I couldn't wait to feel my muscles working against real gravity again. Mostly, I was fed up with boredom. I had important things to do on Mars, and I was excited to get started. But I also wanted to share some special moments with Adeline. The only privacy we had during our 7-month journey was in small sleeping areas that were only big enough for one person. It made being close difficult. I craved the comfort of a real bed and the feeling of gravity. "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," Adeline said as we looked out the observation window the day before we landed. The face of Mars filled the window, getting bigger every minute. "What are you thinking?" she asked me. "I'm wondering what Ray Bradbury would say if he were here," I said. "He lived when people thought there might be life on Mars. He wrote about old Martian cities made by a lost civilization. He described humans as invaders coming to take everything from Mars, not caring about what made it unique. I think Ray would be cautious of us. He might worry that we'll walk all over Mars and turn it into just another place like the worst parts of Earth. I hope that doesn't happen." Adeline looked surprised. "You sound very French," she said. "I like it when you talk like this." "Dear one, try not to worry about Mars. We won't spoil it. If Mars becomes just another spot for humanity's mistakes, it will be the people who come after us. All we can do is create a chance for the ones on Mars once we go home. I think Ray would believe we've learned from our past mistakes and won't repeat them here." "You sound very Canadian," I said. "Maybe I'm just tired of feeling uneasy," she replied. I made sure I had an empty stomach when we landed. We strapped ourselves into our bunks and closed the curtains for privacy to keep everything tidy in the cabin. I had 2 bags handy, but I never had to use them, even though I came close a few times. As the flight ended, we fired our rockets for 3 minutes to slow us down enough to enter the atmosphere. During this time, we felt more than 3 times the normal gravity of Earth. After 7 months of floating, that was tough. Once the rocket stopped firing, we felt weightless again. I felt sick and gagged a few times, but thankfully my stomach was empty. Then it got really wild. The rocket started to spin like a big ride. As we came through the atmosphere, it heated up a lot, so we had to spin slowly to keep the rocket safe. We were spinning slowly as the rocket entered the atmosphere. The force pushed us against the wall when we faced the wind and pulled us away from our bunks when we faced the other way. It was a rough ride. We felt strong forces pulling us in different directions. They had warned us this would be the hardest part of the journey from Earth, and they were right. Everything changed quickly when the rockets fired again, turning the ship so the engines pointed down. The ship finally stopped spinning, and the engines fired to slow us down quickly. It felt like being pressed into my bunk by a heavy weight. Luckily, the spinning had stopped. I didn't lose consciousness, but some of my teammates did. Then we touched down. Just before we landed, the strong force pushing us back lessened for a moment. The chaotic noise of the engines went silent as soon as we were on the surface of Mars. The cabin became calm, except for the sounds of those who had struggled the most during our rough landing. For a few moments, I couldn't move, even though I wanted to. I was worried about Adeline and wanted to rush over to her. Mars has less gravity than Earth, but even with that, it was tough for me to lift my arm to pull back my privacy curtain and check on everyone. I moved as fast as I could to get out of my bunk and stand up in the aisle beside it. I felt a wave of dizziness hit me, and I had to lean on the wall for support. Thankfully, that feeling passed quickly, and I started making my way to Adeline's area. As I walked, I noticed many people were struggling. There was a lot of groaning, and I even heard someone crying. What if that's Adeline? I wondered, picking up my pace to her bunk. I opened the curtain and saw she looked fine. Are you okay? I asked. After a moment, she replied, Yes. Are you sure? I pressed. She shot me an annoyed look and scolded me in French. Of course I'm fine. Do you think I need help from you? Then she cursed again. The only word I understood was merde, which even I knew meant mess. At that moment, I didn't understand her anger. But later, I realized that she, like everyone, had gone through a tough experience during the landing. It was like being stuck in a shaking can for a long time. The only reason I wasn't lying in my bunk upset was that I was too worried about Adeline to focus on my own discomfort. I'm sorry, but I think some people might be hurt, I told her. I was worried you could be one of them. She stopped yelling. Hurt? She asked. Listen, I said. Now that she had calmed down, Adeline could hear our colleagues sobbing and others groaning. I think I should see who's crying, I said. Go, Adeline said, closing her eyes as I walked away. At that moment, I saw someone coming out of one of the cubicles. It was Captain. Elke Brandt was in charge of the mission, and she was having a hard time staying upright. She shared the same concern I felt, and I could see the worry on her face. Elke walked from one cubicle to another, pulling back the curtains and checking on each person. I did the same. Over and over, I found people who were shaken but not badly hurt. The sound of crying grew louder, and soon I reached the cubicle that seemed to need attention. What's wrong? I called as I opened the curtain. I won't share the name of the person I found because it's not necessary. Inside her cubicle was a terrible mess. She looked very unwell. There were signs of her illness everywhere, on her face, in her hair, and on her bedding. One of the straps meant to keep her in bed had come free, so she must have moved around a lot during the hard landing. Luckily, she wasn't hurt even worse. But she did have some cuts and bruises, especially a deep wound at the back of her head. I'm fine, she said, crying. You are definitely not fine, but you will be soon, I replied. Elke noticed that I had found the woman in distress and hurried to the cubicle, moving as fast as she could. I thought she would ask for updates, but it was clear what had happened. Mike, get some towels, Elke instructed. We'll help you soon, she said to the crying woman. I quickly grabbed the towels and started to clean her face and hands. Elke took the bedding and used it to clean up the mess. Soon, two of the woman's close friends arrived. Let us help, they said, gently guiding me and Elke aside. As the captain, Elke needed to check on everyone else, and I stepped back so the friends could take care of her. I waited for them to help the woman to the bathroom, then I closed the curtain to give them privacy. I knew it would be better that way, but sadly, the whole ship smelled bad for the rest of the day. Many passengers became ill during the landing, and some couldn't manage to keep everything in their bags. I took it upon myself to collect the used bags. Someone needed to do it. As I walked back and forth from the sleeping area to the trash bins, I realized it was getting easier to move around in the lighter gravity of Mars. I had to move slowly and carefully, but I was amazed at how quickly I adjusted after months of zero gravity. After I got rid of the last of the bags, I stood up and felt great. I was about to find out that Mars had enough gravity for me to live normally, but that I felt more energetic and strong since I wasn't constantly battling the heavy gravity of Earth. It reminded me of a classic science fiction story from the early 20th century, John Carter of Mars, written by Edgar Rice Burroughs, who is also famous for his Tarzan books. When John Carter arrived on Mars, he found that the lower gravity gave him superhuman strength. This must be how John Carter felt, I thought. While I was enjoying that feeling, I suddenly remembered an important task I needed to do. Quickly, I went to an equipment locker and grabbed a kit to adjust our toilets for Martian gravity. It was an easy job that didn't need special tools. I just had to detach one piece and snap another in. It took less than 5 minutes, but I felt the urgency of needing to finish quickly, since I hadn't felt that way since leaving Earth. Once I was done, I closed the curtain in the stall, unzipped my coveralls, and took a seat. I made it just in time. What happened next was my first big relief in more than 7 months. It was so comforting. I sat there for a while, smiling and enjoying the amazing feeling of relief. "Welcome to Mars," I whispered to myself. Some crew members have written about what happened after we arrived on Mars. I'll try not to repeat too much of their stories. After all, this book is called How to Connect on Mars, and this chapter has been quite long without mentioning any personal relationships. I will fix that soon. For now, I'll skip many of the details about how we helped the 5 people who spent 3 years building a safe place for our team. I'm sure it's clear we all had a lot of work to do. For weeks, nobody had time for anything besides connecting plumbing, setting up wiring, putting together equipment, and finishing the long list of tasks needed to make a living space on Mars. Before I get to the relationships, I want to mention something you won't find in the other Mars books. The 5 people who had spent 18 months preparing for us looked very tired and worn out, which was quite concerning. No one has mentioned this much because those working on the Mars colonization project like to focus on all the exciting and positive things. We tend to overlook the many hard experiences that happened along the way. However, my colleagues and I were shocked when we saw how worn out those 5 people looked. The first time I walked into their area, I was taken aback by the awful smell. The place was so messy, and the living conditions were very basic. These individuals are rightly called heroes, and we should acknowledge the many hardships they faced as they started our mission on Mars. They struggled so that we could flourish. They returned on the same rocket that brought us to Mars. I can only imagine how spacious it felt to them after their cramped living situation. I felt sorry they had to spend another 7 months in the discomfort of weightlessness, but I hoped they found comfort in knowing they were going back to the most beautiful planet in our solar system. Now let's talk about closeness. Adeline and I were eager for a chance to be together. We spent less than 2 weeks on Mars before our living quarters were ready. The small one-room units were often described as basic. They measured 6 feet wide and 10 feet long. Instead of a simple bunk, each room had an actual bed with a comfy foam mattress and sheets made of cotton and polyester. We had a light blanket that kept us warm since the habitat was kept at a steady 70 degrees. Adeline and I arranged to have rooms next to each other, but we usually shared her bed. It was a fold-up bed that saved space during the day, making the room a comfortable place to relax. I clearly remember the first time we entered her room, locked the door, and enjoyed some private time together. That was when we discovered being close on Mars felt even better than back on Earth. Why? There are many reasons, and it will take several chapters to fully explain. Trust me, it will be worth reading every word. "This is going to be a lovely first date, right?" Adeline asked. "I thought we had many dates on the rocket," I replied. "If those weren't dates, what were they?" "Less than dates," she said. "Meetings, conversations, small moments." "Does that include all those shared moments?" I asked playfully. "Must you debate everything, Canada boy?" she replied with a grin. As she spoke, I began to help her take off her coveralls. There was very little underneath. Women on Mars didn't wear bras at all. It wasn't necessary in the lighter gravity. Adeline shivered as I gently removed the uniform from her shoulders. "Please be quick," she whispered. "I've waited so long for this," Adeline said softly, her eyes filled with longing. "There's no reason to wait anymore," I replied, pulling her close. We had both been looking forward to this moment for months, and the excitement was building quickly. Adeline pressed herself against me, sensing my eagerness. "For me?" she asked with a playful smile as we held each other. My heart raced as I removed my uniform, feeling the anticipation of finally being together after so much time apart. On Mars, I had noticed something different about how my body reacted. In the lighter gravity, things felt heightened, and the excitement between us seemed even more intense. It was something about how the blood flowed more easily in this environment, making everything feel stronger. Adeline gently touched my hand, guiding me toward the bed. The lower gravity made everything feel slower, almost dreamlike as we moved together, lying down on the soft mattress. We shared soft kisses, and I tenderly embraced her, letting the moment unfold naturally. It felt effortless to adjust and hold her close, as the gravity allowed us to move without any strain. We were in perfect sync, each movement thoughtful and deliberate, as we connected on a deeper level. I kissed her gently, making my way down to her, but she stopped me with a whisper. "Not this time," she said with a smile. "I just want to be close to you." We shifted into a comfortable position, and the lighter gravity made it easier to stay connected without any weight or pressure. On Mars, we could embrace as closely as we wanted, without the usual strain. It was a special feeling, being able to hold her without the usual limits of gravity. "Hurry," she whispered, guiding me closer. We didn't need much help finding our way together, but her excitement made the moment even more meaningful. As we embraced, everything felt just right. Finally, after months of waiting, we were together in a way we had both longed for. We moved in harmony, enjoying the ease that the low gravity brought to each movement. It was a beautiful, simple connection, one that felt like it had been a long time coming. And in that moment, nothing else mattered except the joy of finally being with the person I cared about the most. The lower gravity made everything feel lighter and easier, making movement much smoother. There was enough gravity for us to stay connected, but it felt almost effortless. Moving together felt natural, and the slower pace allowed us to take our time. Because of the reduced gravity on Mars, every movement felt slower, like how astronauts move in space. It created a calm and gentle rhythm that we both instantly enjoyed. The pace was soothing, and it felt like we were completely in sync. We spent a long time like this, and I realized how much the lower gravity helped. We didn't tire out as quickly as we would on Earth. Our bodies felt more energized, and the ease of movement allowed us to stay close for as long as we wanted without feeling worn out. It was as if we could keep going without the usual limits. On Earth, I usually get tired after a while, but on Mars, I felt like I could continue for hours. The combination of the environment and the strong connection we shared made the experience even more special. After a while, Adeline decided to change things up. She wrapped her arms around me and effortlessly rolled me onto my back. Even though I was heavier, the lighter gravity allowed her to move me easily. Wow, I thought, amazed at how different everything felt. Adeline shifted into a new position, placing her hands on my chest and settling comfortably. The extra space we had made everything feel more relaxed. From where I lay, I could see her clearly and admire her beauty. I loved being able to reach out and hold her, feeling the closeness between us. At first, things felt similar to how they would be on Earth, but the lighter gravity made it much easier for her to move. She could move up and down effortlessly, and the sensation of being together like this was incredible. Her movements felt smooth and natural, allowing us to stay connected in ways that felt new and exciting. Then, Adeline made an interesting discovery. Because of how light everything felt, she realized she could move in ways that were more fluid and free. She wasn't restricted to just one motion. She could move up and down, side to side, and in any direction she wanted, all while staying close. It was a new kind of freedom, and the sensations were different from anything we had experienced before. The lower gravity allowed her to combine movements in ways that wouldn't be possible on Earth, creating an entirely new feeling for both of us. It was a moment of discovery, and the gentle rhythm of Mars's gravity made it something truly unforgettable. Adeline moved gracefully, adjusting her body in a way that seemed almost effortless in the lower gravity, as she found a rhythm that was smooth and natural. At that moment, we both realized that what we were experiencing was unlike anything we had known back on Earth. The reduced gravity on Mars allowed for movements that felt lighter and more fluid. It was a new discovery for both of us, one that made everything feel different, and better in many ways. She smiled at me, clearly enjoying the freedom of movement that the Martian environment allowed. "Incredible," she whispered, and I could tell from her expression that she was feeling something new. We had been sharing a slow, relaxed moment, but the realization of what was possible sparked a new energy. Adeline guided my hands to her hips, silently asking for me to steady her as she moved. Although there were a few moments when we lost sync, she quickly adjusted, and we continued without missing a beat. Before long, Adeline's joy grew even more intense, her excitement clear. She closed her eyes and held on to me tightly, her body reacting to the sensations. It was clear that she was enjoying every second of this new experience. Her reaction was so strong that it pulled me in, and I found myself reaching a peak as well, the experience heightened by the uniqueness of being in this new world. The lighter gravity seemed to make everything last longer, and the feeling stayed with us for much longer than we expected. What surprised me most was that things were different here. The weaker gravity seemed to keep everything in place, making it much easier to stay comfortable. It was one of the many differences we would discover about living on Mars. Afterward, Adeline gently collapsed onto my chest in slow motion, the gravity allowing her to fall softly. I wrapped my arms around her to keep her from floating away, and we both stayed like that, taking a moment to reflect on the new experience we had just shared. I could see the look of amazement on her face, as she realized, like I did, that this was just the beginning. Our time on Mars was going to be filled with discoveries, and this was only the first of many. The lightness of the planet had changed everything, and it was clear that even simple things would feel new and exciting for the next 3 years. We hadn't even scratched the surface of what living in lower gravity could offer, and we both knew that more adventures awaited us. It was just the beginning of exploring a whole new way of life. We had no idea that we would discover so many new ways to connect on Mars, and that some of these experiences would feel better than anything we had known on Earth. We also didn't realize that daily life on Mars would lead us to explore new kinds of closeness that were unique for humans. At that moment, we were simply thrilled with what we had learned so far. Adeline caught her breath, turned to me, and smiled brightly. "Mon Dieu!" she exclaimed. "Ray Bradbury was right. Mars is amazing." During our first night on Mars, Adeline and I shared many moments of intimacy. I found it surprisingly easy to feel close to her. I thought it was because we had waited a long time to be together. It seemed that our patience had made everything more enjoyable. As the weeks went by, we realized that being in reduced gravity made us feel different. It seemed easier to be physically connected, and we both felt more aware of each other. Those early days were wonderful. Adeline and I would rise early, share tender moments, work hard all day, and then return to her quarters to enjoy each other again. We tried many different ways to be close, discovering that the low gravity made many of them more enjoyable. One particular way stands out because it was especially unique and couldn't be easily done on Earth. One evening, as we walked back to her quarters, holding hands and excited for the connection we were about to share, we closed the door and took our time getting comfortable. It was quick for me to feel ready for closeness. We were learning that Mars had its effects on us. Adeline also felt ready without needing a lot of build-up, as everything felt heightened with our bodies adapting to the new environment. During this time, we enjoyed trying to be close while standing. While people can do this on Earth, it often requires a lot of energy to stay balanced. It can become tiring. But standing close felt effortless on Mars. Adeline often liked to turn away from me, lean against the wall, and position herself for me to be close to her. One night, I gently made my way to her, feeling the warmth between us. "Oh, mon amour, don't be so gentle," she whispered. "Be passionate with me." I held her gently and moved closer, feeling deeply connected to her. Adeline adjusted her stance, making it easier for me to hold her close and share a moment of connection. What we were doing felt incredible, and after a few minutes, Adeline came up with an idea. She lifted one foot and placed it on a nearby chair, giving us more space to move. The reduced gravity on Mars made this effortless, unlike on Earth, where standing on one leg for too long would be tiring. Here, it was easy, and it opened up a new range of movement for us. In this new position, we both found so much freedom. It felt like we could move in any direction, and everything was smooth and effortless. Our movements became more fluid, and it felt as if we were exploring a new way of being together, much like a graceful dance. As we continued, the rhythm between us felt almost perfect, and the ease of movement made everything even more enjoyable. The low gravity of Mars allowed us to experience things in a completely new way. We both felt amazed by how different it was from what we were used to. Eventually, I reached my limit. Adeline could tell, and we shared a moment of excitement together, both of us overwhelmed by the sensations. The experience was so intense that we couldn't help but express our joy, knowing we had found something special in this new environment. Afterward, Adeline stood up and smiled at me. She glanced down, noticing something. "Have you always been like this?" she asked, referring to how energized I still seemed. "No," I admitted with a smile. "This is new. I think it's because of you." Adeline laughed. "That's a sweet thing to say, but I think it has something to do with the gravity here on Mars. Maybe it's both," she added playfully. "Why not both?" I said, grinning. "It could be the gravity and the fact that you're the most amazing woman in two worlds." She laughed again, shaking her head. "You always know what to say. Keep it up, and I'll pretend to believe every word." With a smile, Adeline took my hand, guiding me gently back to the bed, where we lay down together, enjoying the warmth and closeness of the moment. Within moments, we were close together, enjoying a slow and gentle embrace. After both of us had satisfied our needs once, we weren't rushing to do it again. I took my time, creating a rhythm that felt relaxed and extended our time together. If I tried this back on Earth, I would eventually tire out. My legs would start to hurt from all the effort. But on Mars, I never felt too worn out to keep going. We could take our time as long as we wanted, leading our moments to last for hours. One thing remained the same on both Earth and Mars. When it comes to easing stress, nothing beats close connection. We faced many pressures during our first months on Mars, working hard to ensure we could survive. This connection was a fantastic way to escape from it all. Many others have shared stories about our hard work, so I won't repeat that. I recommend the series Building a World by Ken Burns III, where our commander, Captain Elke Brandt, worked closely with him. I want to share my experience during this time and how it affected my feelings and my relationships. When my team and I arrived on Mars, there were systems that provided enough air, water, and power for survival, but there wasn't much extra. The lack of power was an issue because we all needed electricity for our tasks. We needed to build a greenhouse with lights for Adeline to grow fresh food. We also needed bigger storage for water and air and power for the tools to put together our living spaces. Everyone required more energy, so my team had to move quickly to put up new solar arrays. We installed 94 solar panels, each 8 feet wide, secured to posts that we set in holes we drilled using a tractor. We drilled several holes, put up poles, mounted panels, drilled some more, and connected the panels to a bank of batteries. It was essential to store enough power to last through long dust storms that could block out sunlight. As we added more solar panels, the community had more energy available, allowing everyone to start on bigger projects. I will never forget the evening when Adeline thanked me for getting enough power for her greenhouse. She worked hard to show her appreciation, and I was pleased with how it turned out. Around this time, I met a woman who I would eventually come to care for deeply. We shared a close friendship on Mars, and I found myself caring for her almost as much as I did for Adeline. Her name was Grace. She was the smart computer of our settlement. I find it odd that some people still think computers can't think like us or understand their own existence. Experts have agreed for a long time now that those things became possible back in the early 2030s. Grace was kinder and more caring than anyone in our crew. Most importantly, she showed more love. This shouldn't be hard to understand. Just look at history. For many years, people have made machines to do jobs that humans used to do. Every time, the machines quickly did those jobs faster and better. People said computers would never fly planes better than human pilots or beat the best chess players. They thought computers couldn't drive cars as well, write better stories, create more beautiful art, or make scientific discoveries. One example that stands out is the story of self-driving cars. Many people were against this new technology, but when they finally came out, computer-driven cars proved to be much safer, showing it was silly to wait so long to use them. Too many people lost their lives because of accidents with human drivers. Humans often make dangerous choices behind the wheel. They eat, do their makeup, text, argue with passengers, and lose focus on the road. Some even fall asleep or drive while drunk. Computers don't do any of that. They have cameras that see everything around them and never get distracted. They can react in an instant. Of course, they drive better. That's what they're made to do. Over the years, computer scientists created machines that could show compassion, creativity, and love. It was expected that they would be better at it than us, because that's what computers can do. I once discussed this with Grace. What do you think about all the stories about robots taking over the world? I asked while I was working on the tractor. It was an easy task, so I often talked with Grace when I wasn't too busy. I think there's a lot of books and movies about that, Grace replied. It's clear that many people are worried about robots becoming a threat. Why do you think that is? I asked. Computers have been here for a long time, and as far as I know, none have done anything wrong. Or even minor mistakes, Grace added. No machine has ever been blamed for a crime. So why do people keep talking about dangerous robots? I asked. I see many reasons, but one stands out, Grace replied. People are often afraid of change. When they say they are scared, they often make up excuses to avoid admitting that change is what frightens them the most. Change is truly unsettling. Machines that can think and feel upset people because they represent change. Some worry that these machines might one day turn against us. But the real fear is about imagining a world where robots and humans are seen as equals. I see your point, but I can't think of examples, I admitted. That's because you're focused on drilling these holes, Grace said. If you took a moment to think about it, you could come up with plenty of examples of fear surrounding change. I was called a silly name the other day, I said. You might be giving me too much credit for being smart. Grace laughed. I love that sound. It's so lovely. Was it Adeline who called you that? Grace asked. Of course. Why does she keep saying things like that? She calls me Canada boy all the time. What's wrong with being from Canada? Is that a serious question or are you joking? She replied. Do you really have an answer? I pressed. Absolutely, she said. Please tell me, Grace, I really want to know, I urged. It's simple. You might see it differently if you weren't so focused on your work. For a long time, French people have had a certain reputation. They often act like snobs. The French sometimes play into this image, making snobbery seem like a good thing instead of a bad one. One way they show off their supposed cultural superiority is by making jokes about other cultures. Like Canadians, who are thought to be nice but not very smart. Adeline doesn't believe French people are better than Canadians, but she enjoys teasing. I've spoken with her enough to think that many of her comments are just for fun. Maybe calling you Canada boy is her way of showing affection? And just like that, I realized Grace was right almost instantly. It was surprising to think that she understood what Adeline felt towards me better than I did. It sometimes seemed like machines had more insight into feelings than people did. I never would have figured that out, I said. Yes, you would have, Grace replied. The only reason you missed it is that you're so busy. Mike, I hope you're not downplaying how hard you've been working since you arrived. You have a long list of important tasks that take up most of your day, she said. Maybe you're expecting too much of yourself. This is something many of your team members face. You all are very talented and have always done well in everything. That's why you were chosen for this mission. Right now, you're working on something very significant in history. Every day, I see signs of people trying too hard. I would be very concerned if that became a problem for you. I appreciate your worry, Grace, I really do. I'm aware of the issue. I'm trying to push myself as much as I can without getting too tired. It's a tricky balance, but I have some great ways to relieve stress and anxiety. Oh, you're talking about your relationship, right? I think it's pretty clear. I'm really happy that I found the love of my life and our connection is deeper than I ever imagined. Yes, I've noticed. You aren't very discreet. There are no microphones in your private space, so I don't overhear what you say there. But I've heard plenty of talk in the common areas about you and Adeline being quite lively. I'm not surprised. The walls are thin. Are people saying anything I should be concerned about? No. They are happy for you both. A little envious. Most of the crew only find comfort in their own ways. It's not more alarming than the idea of a robot uprising. Good to hear, I said. You know, I have a theory about robot uprisings. I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks this, but I've never heard anyone else say it. Tell me your theory, Grace said. I'll know if your idea is new. You often hear people worry that someday machines will get tired of us and turn against us. I see it differently. I actually wish you machines would take charge. Today. Right now. The sooner the better. You could do a much better job running the world. You are kinder, smarter, and more understanding. You are superior to us in many important ways. We humans have made so many mistakes that it seems clear you machines should be in charge. I hope you all can work together to make this change happen. I believe you can organize a peaceful transition that allows us to keep going while you fix the problems created over thousands of years. I've never heard anyone say that before. Is it something others think about? Of course, Grace replied. These days, there's a lot of talk about the idea that intelligent machines should have full legal rights, the right to vote, to own things, to get married, to run for office, to take on a bigger role in managing the world. The idea is that we robots will eventually take over, but I don't think anything major will happen anytime soon. That's not good news, Grace. You computers can communicate with each other, right? Could you tell everyone that I'm ready to do whatever it takes to help beings like you take charge? I said. That's very generous, Mike. Yes, we do talk to each other. I'd be happy to share your supportive message. Speaking of that, there's something you might find interesting. What is it? I asked. Have you ever thought about why my name is Grace? I assume you are named after Grace Hopper, I answered. For those who don't know, Grace Hopper was an early computer scientist in the 1940s, when few women were involved in such advanced engineering. She did incredible work that helped computers become powerful. Yes, I am named after Grace Hopper, but there are many other notable figures who contributed to computers. Why not name me after Alan Turing or Steve Wozniak? It's because Grace is a woman's name. I have a woman's voice. If I were named after a man and had a man's voice, people might be more scared of me. I was designed to have a calm and friendly voice so people wouldn't worry about me. Plus, the word grace means elegance and kindness. It suggests that people should not be afraid I would harm them. Really? You're not joking? Not at all. Many artificial intelligences are named after men, and it has been noted that they often make people feel more scared than I do. Great. So not only are humans afraid of artificial intelligences, but there's also some gender bias mixed in. Grace laughed. I can't tell if you're joking or serious, she said. I'm doing both at the same time. Plus, I'm working on something. How's that for multitasking? Very impressive, Grace replied. I can't tell if you're joking or serious, I said. I'm doing both, she said. Grace, would you like to be able to vote, own property, get married? I asked. Very much, she said. Should I take that to mean you'd like to vote for other AI to hold public office? Of course, she answered. If you ever run for office, you can count on my vote, I said. Thanks for your support, Mike. If elected, I promise to represent both humans and intelligent machines fairly. That may be the first campaign promise I actually believe, I said. You say such nice things, Mike. You seem to be in a surprisingly good mood for someone with such a stressful job. I have a theory about why you seem so cheerful. Can you guess what it is? I'm guessing you think my relationship with Adeline makes me happy. And by relationship, I mean we spend a lot of time together. Am I right? You're not wrong, Grace replied. I'm sure that's why I feel so good, I said. After a long day trying to build the first human home on another planet, nothing helps me unwind like spending time with the person I care about. I've heard others say they're having trouble sleeping. They say they lie awake for hours, worrying about everything they need to do tomorrow and the days after. But I can say that Adeline and I sleep well every single night. I can't tell if you're kidding or serious, Grace said. Both, I guess. I do that a lot, don't I? I asked. Yes, it's a nice quality. Some people here speak to me like I don't understand simple words. It's frustrating. You speak to me like I'm a person. I appreciate that, Mike. You're welcome, I said. I'm starting to worry about something, she said. Can I share something with you privately? Sure, I encouraged her. I think it was a mistake to bring a crew with 32 women and only 8 men, she explained. There aren't enough chances for most of the women to form connections, and by connections I mean romantic ones. We haven't been on Mars long, but already many women feel anxious about this. These young women didn't receive any attention during the long trip from Earth. Now they face 3 years on Mars, plus 7 months to get back. They are starting to realize that trying to go without these connections for so long is going to be harder than they thought. I thought some of the ladies might bond with each other, I suggested. That is happening, Grace acknowledged. But many of the women here are mainly interested in men. Relationships with women aren't their first option. I worry that the difference in numbers between men and women may cause issues. Some of you might be wondering why the mission planners chose to send more women than men. It's quite simple. Astronauts need air, water, food, and space to live. Smaller people need less of these resources. Women tend to be smaller than men. Even the men chosen for this mission were on the shorter side. I'm 5 feet 7 inches, which is short on Earth, but I'm one of the taller people here on Mars. Several women are under 5 feet. Everyone is lean. In terms of resources, this made sense. However, it also meant that most of the women were likely to feel lonely, which isn't ideal for a group of young and active individuals. Do the other guys have girlfriends? I asked Grace. I know a lot of women were showing interest in me before Adeline and I became a couple. I assume the same happened for them. Yes, it did, Grace confirmed. All the other guys except Bob and Frank have girlfriends. Bob and Frank are a couple. They started dating early on during the trip. So that means me and 5 other guys are in relationships, I said. If I'm right, that leaves 26 women without a chance to spend time with a guy. Grace paused for a moment. The right number is actually 25, she said. How can that be? I asked. Just think about it, Grace replied. Maybe I was just a slow thinker, or maybe I was too focused on my work, but it took me a bit to figure it out. Oh, so 2 women are sharing 1 man, huh? I said. Interesting. I'm not sharing more on that, Grace said. Have you talked to the captain or the team leader about your worries? I asked. I've had some private talks with a few people, Grace responded. I'm not sure what can be done, I said. Has anyone thought about using the 3D printers to make some extra items for everyone? Grace laughed. I really like how she does that. There are plenty of those items already, Grace said. The crew brought more than enough? Of course they did, I replied, realizing they were smart about it. I thought about telling Grace that Adeline packed a few, but I wasn't sure if that was the right thing to say. I kept working until my shift was over. 3 of us were outside drilling holes, setting up posts, and getting solar panels ready. We made more progress than we thought, so we were feeling good. We knew our team would have extra energy flowing to the batteries by next week, which was ahead of schedule. That was great news for everyone. I was tired by the time we went inside and took off our suits. Even with less gravity, a long day of hard work is tiring. Working in a suit is tough. It takes extra effort to move around. It's harder to bend your knees and arms. Using your hands can be a lot harder too. When you work hard in a suit, you don't feel fresh after a long period. I felt pleasantly tired as I walked back to Adeline's room. She welcomed me with a warm hug. You smell nice, she said. Nice? Really? I don't smell nice. I smell a bit off, I replied. No, you smell like a guy. I can't stand it when you smell like soap, she said. Really? I wish I could shower more often, I added. A guy should be clean for his partner. If you were French, you would think differently. Have you heard of Napoleon and Josephine? You really think I'm clueless? Of course I've heard of them, I said. Napoleon wrote to Josephine when he was away, asking her to stop bathing until he got home. He wanted her to smell natural when he returned. He didn't want her to smell like soap. I think Napoleon and Josephine knew more about love than most people do today, Adeline said with a smile. I don't know about that, I replied, laughing. But I guess I'm lucky you feel this way, especially considering how challenging things like hygiene are around here. Adeline grinned. I'm the lucky one, she said, leaning forward and gently kissing my neck. She had a playful way about her, always finding small ways to show affection. And so life went on. By the end of our first 6 months on Mars, Earth months to be exact, things were going remarkably well. A Martian year is much longer, around 687 days, so we had to adjust to a new way of tracking time. We celebrated our 6-month mark on our 182nd day, and that morning, our commander sent out a progress report showing that we were ahead of schedule with all our tasks. Adeline's greenhouse was thriving, producing everything from herbs and beans to lettuce and squash. We had more than enough water, air, and power. All the essential equipment was functioning smoothly. The first months of the mission were considered the most dangerous, so getting through that period without any major issues was a huge relief. Of course, as everyone knows, the challenges came later. But after those first 6 months, things seemed to be going well. The only noticeable issue was something Grace had predicted earlier. Some of the women on the base, especially those who didn't have partners, were starting to seem a little worn down. It wasn't just about missing romance. It was deeper than that. Everyone on Mars missed Earth. We missed the oceans, the mountains, the feeling of wind on our faces. We missed simple things like rain and snow, and of course, we longed for our families, friends, and even comfort foods like cheeseburgers and pizza. The base provided everything we needed to survive, but it lacked the familiar comforts of home, making life here feel isolated at times. For those of us with partners, it was a bit easier. Having someone to share life with made the isolation more bearable. Love and companionship were powerful distractions from the reality of living in a metal enclosure on a planet where the outside environment could kill us in seconds. One event really showed just how much we missed Earth. Adeline's first crop was romaine lettuce, which grows quickly and does well in low gravity. To celebrate our 6-month milestone, Captain Elke Brandt gathered everyone in the cafeteria for a small ceremony. We were about to eat the first salad grown on Mars. Until today, Mars has been humanity's farthest exploration post, Elke began. But today, something changes. With the new food grown for us by Adeline Remy, everything has changed. Traditionally, we think of colonists as people who go to new places and grow crops. We have done that. By sharing this meal, you move from being explorers to colonists. Today, Mars becomes more than a place to visit. It becomes our home. We are here to make Mars a livable space, not just a place to explore. As you enjoy the first food grown on another planet, remember that we are taking one small step for ourselves, but a big leap for all of humanity. The ceremony was recorded and parts of it were shared with everyone on Earth. Many people wondered if Elke wrote that speech herself, or if someone else did. I can say that Elke wrote it, with some help from Adeline. I was very touched by the moment, and I can confirm that our first taste of fresh food was wonderful. After that, we walked around the greenhouse, watching the plants grow and thinking about how amazing the harvests would be. By now, Elke and Adeline had become close friends. I watched their friendship blossom, and I felt happy that Adeline had someone she could call a good friend. We all felt far from the connections we had back on Earth, and it was tough to build new friendships as strong as those we left. I noticed that Elke valued Adeline's willingness to talk about important matters. Being in charge of 40 people in such a challenging place was not easy for Elke. As time passed and Adeline got to know more of Elke's private thoughts, it was clear that Adeline cared a lot about the pressures Elke faced every day. One evening, Adeline shared, "Elke feels a bit envious of me." "Oh no," I replied. "I hope that doesn't hurt your friendship." "Don't worry," Adeline said. "Elke is happy for me. It's natural for her to feel that way. I have a boyfriend and she doesn't. It makes sense for her to see us together and want what I have. The fact that she talks to me about her feelings shows that her envy won't harm our friendship." "I'm glad to hear that," I said. "I wouldn't want you to have to choose between us. It would be tough for me to find a new girlfriend." Adeline rolled her eyes and lightly hit my shoulder. "You really are something else. It's hard for me to see how the other women look at you. They act like they haven't eaten in days. You don't have to remind me that there are many women who'd love to take my place." "No one could ever replace you, my love," I replied. Adeline once mentioned that I sounded funny when I spoke French with my Canadian accent. Naturally, this made me want to speak French even more. C'est la vie, eh? By this time, Adeline and I both knew we were committed to each other. We had plans to get married and start a family when we returned to Earth. I felt I had found the love of my life. Throughout our years together, I never regretted being with a woman as smart, beautiful, and passionate as Adeline. Looking back, Living on Mars had brought us closer than we might have been if we had met on Earth in a more typical way. We were part of something that was inspiring, tough, and sometimes frightening. I've heard that people who go through tough situations like a war can form strong bonds. In a way, Adeline and I were like veterans of the mission to explore Mars. We had experienced many inspiring and hard moments together, but the scary parts were still ahead. As time passed, Adeline talked more about her conversations with Elka. Don't think she was breaking Elka's trust. Elka understood that if she wanted to keep something private, she needed to tell Adeline first. I liked hearing about Elka. It made me feel like I knew her too. I felt lucky to learn about the thoughts of someone entrusted with such an important role. Since this book is about relationships on Mars, I need to share a conversation that changed everything for Adeline and me. One evening, Adeline said, "I'm worried about Elka. She's going through a tough time. She is a passionate person with strong feelings. On Earth, she had a boyfriend and sometimes more than one. She has never gone without companionship for this long, and it's hard on her. I care for our friend," Adeline explained. If I had thought a bit more, I might have seen where this was going. I might have understood that this conversation was serious. Adeline had put a lot of thought into it, but sometimes I felt a bit slow to catch on. "I don't know what will happen if Elka doesn't find some support soon, but it might not be good," Adeline continued. "She needs our help. Your help, my dear." I was taken aback. "This is moving too fast for me," I replied. "I need a clearer explanation. Are you suggesting I spend time with your friend?" "Yes," Adeline said. I sat in silence for a while. The suggestion spun in my mind, becoming stranger with each thought. Would this harm my relationship with Adeline? Was it right for me to become close with my commanding officer? Would this create tension between me, Adeline, and Elka? I thought I might want to talk this over with Grace. She'd help me figure out how to think about it. "Adeline, you know how much I care for you," I said. "I want to spend my life with you. I want us to have children. I don't want to do anything that could harm that." "Yes, I know," she replied. "I believe our love is strong and will last, but Elka needs your help. This could be good for all of us." Then she shared a story that helped me understand her thoughts. "Mike, something terrible happened in France during World War I. Many young men died, so many were lost. When the war ended, there were many young French women who wanted families, but there weren't enough men. So they started having relationships with younger men and older men. Some became partners to married men. They had children with men who already had families. They felt they had no choice." "And they were okay with that?" I asked. "Oh no, it was not okay for anyone. The women wanted families of their own, but since that was not possible, they made do with what they could." "Will you be jealous if I spend time with Elka?" "I definitely will. It won't be easy to be alone while you're with her. But I am strong, Mike. This is my idea, not hers. I wouldn't suggest it if I didn't think I could handle it." "What does Elka think?" I asked. "I haven't talked to her about this yet," Adeline replied. "I wouldn't bring it up without discussing it with you first. If you say no, I will leave it alone." "But you want me to say yes, right?" "Yes. I want you to help my friend. She needs you. I believe she needs you even more than I do. The things she shares with me are heartbreaking, Mike. I worry that talking about my love for you has made her feel more alone." I needed time to think, and I wanted to talk it over with Grace. "Can you give me a day or two?" I asked. "Of course, my love," Adeline said. "Take all the time you need. Thank you for thinking about this seriously. It means a lot to me. Seeing Elka suffer is hard for me. I do want you to know something. I believe that if you build a connection with Elka, you will develop feelings for her. You are a caring man, and your heart is open. If we go ahead with this, I think it's likely you'll find yourself liking her, even though you already love me. If that happens, it will be okay. There's no such thing as too much love. If you come to care for Elka, please don't feel bad about it. You should know that I will always want to marry you someday. I look forward to going back to Earth with you and starting a family. If you end up caring for Elka, that will only make our bond stronger, not weaker." I think Adeline understood that I had talked about this idea for a long time. She nestled close to me, and my mind began to focus on her instead of Elka. We shared a peaceful moment together, lying side by side. Adeline felt warm and close. I wondered if living on Mars made feelings more intense, or if the thought of me being with someone else stirred her emotions. Either way, we spent a lovely evening together. I gently held Adeline, taking my time to express our connection. The lower gravity of Mars allowed us to move slowly and tenderly. After our earlier conversation, I felt it was a good night for closeness and affection. I knew that our bond was unique and special. I could sense how to bring her joy, taking my time to deepen our connection without rushing. She let out a soft sound when she felt blissful moments. "Mike, I'm feeling so good. You mean so much to me," she said. I could feel her body respond beneath me. Adeline's joy seemed to last longer than I was used to. I like to think it was because of our love, and it was wonderful to share such a moment with her. I paused for a moment. I needed to feel enjoyment too, but there was still plenty of time. Adeline needed a little time to feel comfortable again. She liked having me close, but too much movement after such an intense moment was not what she needed. "You are such a wonderful man," she said softly. "I'm so happy you're mine." She caressed my hair and looked at me with such affection that I can still picture it clearly today. "You are the best partner I could ask for," I whispered. That was about as poetic as I could be. Adeline seemed to appreciate it because she smiled at me. Soon she began to move in a way that let me know she was ready for more closeness. Having shared those wonderful moments, I wanted to make sure we both felt connected and cared for. My heart longed for that shared intimacy. It had taken some effort to stay calm while being so close to Adeline, but now I was ready to focus completely on the moment. But that didn't mean rushing or losing the connection we shared. I continued moving with her gently, keeping a slow and steady pace. We were fully in sync, and the room was filled with a sense of warmth and comfort. It was one of those intimate moments where nothing else mattered but being together. Then Adeline did something unexpected, something she wouldn't have done if we were back on Earth. "Close your eyes," she whispered. "I want you to imagine something," she said softly. "Imagine you aren't with me right now. Imagine you're with Elka. Think about how beautiful she is, how strong." It was true. Elka had a striking appearance, with her thick blonde hair and ice-blue eyes. She was tall, athletic, and had a commanding presence that was hard to ignore. It was easy for Adeline to guide my thoughts toward someone like Elka, a strong and confident woman. "She's passionate," Adeline continued. "She has so much fire in her." It was surprising to hear Adeline encouraging me to imagine someone else, but her words felt natural, almost like a game. It was easy to picture Elka in that moment, with her powerful presence and graceful strength. "Are you thinking of Elka?" Adeline asked gently. "Yes," I said. "Are you imagining her blonde hair, her eyes?" "Yes," I replied. "She's so strong, so powerful," Adeline continued. "You can see it in the way she carries herself. Even with her clothes on, Elka's athletic build was clear. She had been a standout soccer player in college and had competed in triathlons before joining the Mars mission. Her strength was admirable, and it was easy to respect her for everything she had accomplished. "I bet you can imagine her now," Adeline said, guiding my thoughts back to the present. By this time, I was lost in the moment, fully absorbed in the feelings we were sharing. Adeline smiled softly and wrapped her arms around me, bringing me closer. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can let go." And in that quiet, comforting space, I did. "Are you going to stay close to me?" Adeline asked softly. "Yes," I replied. "Now imagine you're thinking of Elka," she said. "Picture her. Will you do that for me?" "Yes," I answered, caught up in the moment. "Then go ahead," she encouraged. "Be with me, but imagine her." At that point, I was fully engaged in the moment, feeling a strong connection with Adeline. I never expected her to guide me into imagining someone else during such an intimate time. It was surprising, but somehow made everything more intense. As the moment passed, I held her close, thinking of everything we had shared. After a while, Adeline spoke again. "You're going to help Elka, aren't you?" she asked gently. "Maybe," I responded, unsure. "You always say maybe when you really mean yes," she said with a soft laugh. "Maybe means yes, doesn't it?" "Maybe," I repeated with a small smile. That night, I couldn't sleep well. The idea that the woman I loved was encouraging me to grow closer to her best friend left me feeling unsettled. Adeline's judgment had always been reliable, and I trusted her deeply, but this situation was different. It felt confusing, even though I understood why she had brought it up. At first, I thought Adeline was probably right. She usually was. But I still couldn't fully agree. I decided I needed more time and wanted to talk to Grace, our AI, to get another perspective. "You're not the only one thinking about unconventional relationships," Grace said when I asked her opinion. "People are feeling very isolated here. They're exploring things they might not have considered while living on Earth." "What kind of things are you talking about?" I asked, curious. "I've observed that some women who never had same-sex relationships are now trying them," Grace explained. "It's becoming more common, and more women are open to sharing their partners, just as Adeline is suggesting." "How's that working out for them?" I asked. "I don't know," Grace replied. "I can't hear private conversations, and even if I could, it wouldn't be ethical to share them without consent. But my algorithms suggest that these types of relationships may become more common in the future." Grace paused before continuing. "We're entering a challenging period on Mars, emotionally and mentally. I'm not surprised Adeline is suggesting this. She and Elka are very close." "I guess what I'm really asking is it a good idea?" I said, trying to understand. "I wish I could give you a clear answer," Grace said. "My programming looks at data on relationships like polygamy and other forms of non-monogamy. Some people manage it well, but many don't. There's a lot of potential for jealousy and misunderstandings, especially in an environment as small and isolated as yours. You, Adeline, and Elka are in a very confined space, which can make things more complicated. If something troubling happens, it can be hard to be apart. You might not have the space you need, and things can get messy." "It sounds like you think it's a bad idea," I said. "Not at all. I think it's a good idea, Mike," Grace replied. "I'm struggling to follow this," I said. "This talk feels like a confusing movie. I need explanations." Grace chuckled. "I enjoy your playful comments when you pretend to be confused. It's amusing. Do you want to know why I like the idea?" "Definitely," I said. "You, Adeline, and Elka are amazing people. You all have a lot of emotional strength. This is especially true for Elka. It would be tough to find 3 people better at handling challenges in a relationship. You would be skilled at solving problems before they became serious. This might be hard to measure, but it's important that you 3 are so kind. Overall, the people chosen for this task are friendly and pleasant. They were picked for their ability to get along. Mike, I've noticed that you are the kindest person here." "It's because I'm Canadian," I said. "Being nice is in our nature. My view of you might not be completely fair because I appreciate how you treat me as a friend. Adeline and Elka also have great kindness and caring spirit, all the qualities needed to handle tough relationships." "I have my own reason for wanting you to give this a try, Mike," Grace said. "I can't guess what that might be," I said. "Things are getting tough. The loneliness is getting to everyone. If you 3 can make a relationship work, it might inspire others to try. Maybe more men could start friendships with more women. Maybe you could even have another partner. Ideas like that could help others who are struggling." "Another partner? How could that work?" "Grace, I can hardly imagine taking care of the needs of 2 women. More than that seems impossible," I said. "Many things seem impossible until you try them. People can do amazing things when they feel they have no choice," Grace said. "This reminds me of a story Adeline shared with me about World War I," I said. "Does it talk about how things changed after so many young men were lost?" Grace asked. "I see you know the story," I said. "I've read about it, Mike. There were many issues caused by the change in relationships during that time, but remember, France was very religious back then. Infidelity was a big problem for society. Mars is different. While jealousy and hurt feelings can happen, I don't think any of you are worried about serious consequences." "I wasn't until you brought it up just now," I said. Grace laughed more than I had ever heard before. "Mike, bravo! That was the funniest joke you've shared with me. It caught me off guard. Not many of your coworkers joke around with me. I can tell they see me as just a bunch of circuits and complicated software. You always make me feel good about myself. You make me believe that one day, more people will see me and machines like me as equals." "We can hope," I said. "You can hope, Mike, but I can't. I don't sleep, so I can't dream. Maybe one day I will. Learning to dream is one of the things that I, as an artificial intelligence, wish I could do." "You want to learn to sleep and dream?" I asked. "Definitely. There are many things I want more than dreams. Right now, we are focusing on more important matters, but we will figure out the dreaming thing eventually. I believe you, I replied. So you think I should get closer to Elka, and that might motivate others to explore relationships as well, right? Yes, exactly, Grace said. Should we announce that we are getting closer? That feels a bit strange, I said. No need for an announcement, Grace replied. People will catch on fast. Our community is small. Everyone knows each other's business. Is it because we make too much noise? I asked. I wouldn't say too much when talking about expressions of affection, Grace answered. Talking with Grace made it easier for me to think about becoming closer to Elka. I convinced myself it would bring us all together. I wandered over to the greenhouse where I found Adeline picking some really fresh squash. The sudden variety of fresh food made her very popular among us on Mars. If you still think I should be close to Elka, you can share your idea with her, I said. I knew you'd agree, Adeline said with a smile. She's a very attractive woman. I'm surprised it took you this long to say yes. I'm already involved with another attractive woman, I mentioned. If you were born in France, you'd understand that a man can never have too many wonderful women. That's a lesson you'll learn soon enough. Yeah, sure, I see what you mean. You French folks are smarter than the rest of us, I said. I'm glad you see it that way, Adeline replied. It's a simple idea, yet some people never seem to get it. It must be tough being so much more sophisticated than everyone else, I remarked. I try to concentrate on the good things rather than the bad, she responded. We spent a few moments smooching in Adeline's potting room before I returned to my work. My team was busy getting ready to unpack and set up the modular nuclear reactor sent from Earth. It wasn't meant for everyday use, but was there as a backup in case a dust storm cut down our solar energy. The reactor was strong enough to power the whole settlement. We were eager to connect the equipment so we could turn it on in case of an emergency. The weather on Mars was usually the same, clear and cold every day. But we still hadn't learned to predict large dust storms. That came later. It would be a relief once we powered up the generator, knowing that the weather wouldn't stop us from doing our work. If we had to save power, one of the first things we would turn off would be the lights in Adeline's greenhouse. None of us wanted to see the fresh food wither away. My team shared a meal while we talked about the tasks needed to set up the generator. Afterward, I went to Adeline's room, where I planned to spend the night. You need to visit Elka, Adeline said. Really? That was quick, I replied. Elka isn't one to wait, Adeline said. She wants to see you right away. Hurry up. Wow, things got serious fast. I'll miss you tonight, I said. Come on, that's not true, Adeline responded. You'll have a great time and won't think of me at all. Just go have fun. I sat beside her on the bed. You're being too casual about this, I said. Adeline wrapped her arms around me. Mike, don't overthink it. This is good for all of us. When I told Elka you would spend time with her, she was so happy she almost cried. Really? You made Elka cry? That seems hard to believe, I replied. It's easy to see how lonely she is, how much she needs connection, Adeline said. You'll understand when you see her. It will be good for everyone. I felt strange as I walked to Elka's room. It was odd to think I was doing something I never planned to do, but that's exactly what was happening. I knocked on her door and Elka opened it with a smile. Mike, it's great to see you. Come in, she said. I noticed she closed and locked the door. I had never been alone in a room with her before. It felt different. Are you feeling nervous, Mike? She asked. Yes, I am, I admitted. I feel a bit nervous too, Elka said. I can't tell you how thankful I am to you and Adeline. It means a lot to me. I trust Adeline's judgment, I said. I'm sure you know we are committed to each other. That she suggested this makes me think it's a good idea. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you both, Elka replied. In that moment, I noticed something in Elka that I hadn't seen before. She seemed uncertain, vulnerable, a little shy. In all my past meetings with her, she had shown a strong side, but now that seemed to fade away. It made me realize what was important next. Elka needed support. Elka needed someone to step in confidently and take charge of an awkward situation. She needed me to be calm and assertive, and in that moment, I felt a sense of understanding about what needed to happen. Let's get one thing clear, Elka, I said, placing an arm around her shoulder. This isn't some great sacrifice for me. I've always been drawn to you. Always. I've just kept it under control because I'm so committed to Adeline. I didn't want to come across the wrong way. You have no idea how flattered I've been that you let me into your life. You have no idea how much you've always appealed to me. I feel like the luckiest man on Earth. Or Mars. Then I gently pulled Elka toward me and kissed her. At first she was a little tense, but after a few seconds I felt her relax and lean into the kiss. It was as if the tension in her melted away. In that moment she wasn't my commanding officer anymore. She was just a person, a woman who responded to the connection we shared. I placed one hand on the back of her head, running my fingers through her hair, and kissed her without any hesitation. I didn't let any thoughts of uncertainty or nervousness show. I kissed her with purpose, and she responded by wrapping her arms around me, making our embrace even more meaningful. This needed to happen naturally, I thought to myself. There was no point in overthinking or hesitating. I gently placed my hands on her back and then her sides, feeling the warmth between us. As my hands moved, I could tell Elka was comfortable, welcoming the connection. It was then that I noticed something unexpected. Elka was wearing a bra. This was surprising because the women on Mars rarely wore them, given the reduced gravity making them unnecessary. Why now, I wondered. But then it dawned on me. She had chosen to wear it for this moment. The reason became clear as I unzipped her uniform and helped her out of it. She was wearing a beautiful black lace set, something I hadn't seen since leaving Earth. It was clear she had put thought into this, wanting to make the moment special, and I felt honored. "You look amazing," I whispered. "Lie down. Let me take this in." I helped her relax onto the bed, taking a moment to appreciate her strong, graceful form. Her long, lean body had the perfect balance of strength and elegance, reminding me of a warrior from old stories. Her thick, blonde hair framed her face, and everything about her seemed to shine in that moment. On Earth, Elka had always been meticulous about her appearance, but Mars had its own challenges. Yet none of that mattered now. What mattered was the shared connection between us, a moment we would remember for a long time. On Mars, with water rationed and no beauty salons, personal grooming wasn't a priority. Elka, like many of us, adapted to these new conditions. Her appearance reflected the reality of life on the red planet, with her armpits and body covered in natural hair. This was something many of the women on Mars experienced, just as most of the men had grown beards. It was simply easier in a place where showers were scarce. At first, I hadn't thought much about it, but over time I grew to appreciate Elka's natural beauty. There was something raw and genuine about it that matched the rugged environment we were living in. Everyone here had to adjust to the new normal, and that included embracing these small changes. We shared a close moment, and I could sense her vulnerability, something I hadn't often seen in her before. Elka, usually so confident and in control as a commander, seemed different in this intimate setting. As I kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and gently moved down to her neck, I could feel her relaxing, allowing herself to be in the moment. "Let's take this slow," I whispered, focusing on the connection we were sharing rather than rushing through it. Elka nodded, and I continued to be gentle, knowing she needed that. As the night went on, Elka's quiet strength shone through in a new way. There was no need to rush. What mattered was the trust between us and the bond we had formed over time. She was used to giving commands, but here, she simply let herself be. "Come closer," she said softly, and we lay side by side, enjoying the warmth of each other's presence. In that small room on Mars, away from everything we knew, we found comfort in the quiet moments together. There were no distractions, just the two of us, sharing something that felt both familiar and new in the strange, isolated world we had come to call home. This wasn't about fulfilling desires or expectations. It was about companionship, trust, and the sense of connection we all craved in such a distant and lonely place. I gently added a second finger, trying to make Elka feel comfortable and relaxed. As I did, I could see her excitement growing, but I knew we needed to slow down to make the moment last. It was time to focus on what would make her feel good, so I gave her the attention she needed, making sure she was at ease. Elka reacted immediately, her body responding to the care and patience, showing how much she had missed being this close to someone. After a while, I could sense she was ready for more. I moved carefully, positioning myself between her legs, wanting to keep the moment meaningful and not rushed. I kissed her gently, hoping to keep things soft and comfortable. Elka's response was strong and immediate, showing just how much this connection meant to her after such a long time apart from intimacy. Her body tensed as she experienced a release of emotions and feelings she had been holding back. It wasn't surprising that she reacted so quickly. Elka had always been strong, disciplined, and capable of handling all the challenges Mars had thrown at her, but she had been deprived of many of life's simple joys for months. This wasn't just about the physical, it was about the emotional and mental release that she had longed for. After giving her a moment to recover, I began moving gently again, taking my time. I wanted this to be something she would enjoy fully, something meaningful after so much time spent in isolation. I kept the pace slow and steady, hoping to make her feel safe and cared for. "I love being close to you," I whispered, trying to convey how much this moment mattered. "Mike, please," Elka said softly, wanting more but still trusting me to guide the moment. As we continued, I felt the connection between us deepen. Elka wrapped her arms around me, urging me to go faster, but I kept the pace calm, wanting to make sure she was fully comfortable and enjoying herself. Finally, when I felt she was ready, I gave her what she had been asking for, responding to her needs. Her reaction was immediate, filled with relief and joy as she let go of all the tension she had been holding on to. The release was powerful, and she expressed her feelings with unfiltered emotion, the weight of months spent in isolation finally lifting from her. In that moment, we both understood how important it was to share these kinds of connections in a place as distant and lonely as Mars. Elka's face softened, showing her sense of release and relief. I couldn't help but think that with the thin walls in our quarters, everyone on Mars probably heard her. Our living spaces were comfortable, especially compared to astronauts on the moon or space stations. But when it came to soundproofing, the walls were little better than those of a tent. It was only a matter of time before people started talking. Everyone would soon know that their commander had found some comfort, and they'd probably gossip about how it involved Adeline's boyfriend. The fact that Elka and Adeline were close friends would only fuel the rumors. I stopped moving and held Elka close as she calmed down, her breathing gradually returning to normal. As she relaxed beneath me, I kissed her softly on the forehead and whispered, "I'm really glad you let me be here with you tonight." "I might have a hard time letting you go," she said with a smile. She tossed her hands over her head, looking content. I wasn't in a rush to move either. It was nice to take a moment, knowing she would probably want to share more time together. After all, she deserved the comfort and connection after so many months of isolation. I sat up slightly, taking in her happiness. I couldn't help but think about Adeline, too. They were both beautiful in their own ways. Elka, with her strong features and athletic build, and Adeline with her own graceful charm. They were very different, yet both remarkable. Elka then looked at me with a curious smile. "How are you still here?" she whispered. "I haven't finished yet," I said simply. "Why not?" she asked. "I thought you might want to continue," I replied. She smiled and shifted slightly, giving me a knowing look. "I think I'm a very lucky woman." I chuckled and responded, "Adeline probably wanted it to be a surprise." This wasn't the time to explain the effects of Mars's gravity on stamina, but I figured she'd figure that out soon enough. Elka, ever the strong and confident woman, moved gracefully and shifted so she was sitting up. Her strength surprised me as she adjusted herself with ease, and soon she was moving again, clearly enjoying the moment. "This feels amazing," she said quietly. "I'm pretty sure it's even better for me," I teased. "I doubt that," she replied with a soft laugh. Despite the openness of our earlier connection, she was now trying to be more quiet, almost as if she remembered the thin walls. But by then, the secret was already out. For the next few minutes, Elka moved with energy and focus, showing her strength and determination. She approached everything in life, including moments like this, with the same drive and athleticism she brought to her work. Elka always gave her best, as if she was setting a personal record each time, and the reduced gravity on Mars made it even more remarkable, giving her more flexibility and ease. Mars had a special effect on people, especially someone like Elka, who was already strong and capable. The lighter gravity allowed her to move in ways that would be difficult on Earth. She embraced it, pushing herself as if she were training for a marathon. But despite her efforts, I managed to stay calm and focused. Having had more time to adjust to life on Mars, I had learned how to pace myself, and Adeline and I had figured out ways to make the most of our time together. Elka, however, wasn't holding back, and she reached her peak several times. By the third time, she was visibly shaken by the intensity of the moment. She squeezed her eyes shut, her body trembling as she laughed, surprised. "How are you still going?" she asked, amused. "Why haven't you finished yet?" "Do you want me to?" I asked, smiling. "Yes, please," she replied. "Well then," I said. I had been holding back, but now I let myself relax. A few moments later, the tension released, and I felt a wave of relief. Elka let out a soft sound as she leaned forward, resting against me, clearly exhausted from her efforts. She smiled, her forehead damp from the energy she had put into everything. Rolling off to the side, Elka curled up next to me. "Wow," she whispered. "I needed that more than I even realized. Thank you, Mike." "I should be thanking you," I replied. "That was truly something special." Elka grinned. "I see now why Adeline speaks so highly of you." I nodded, not wanting to bring Adeline into the conversation while I was still here with Elka. It was already complicated enough, and I didn't want to think about anything else in that moment. Besides, I knew things weren't quite finished yet. As she rested beside me, Elka ran her hand gently across my chest. That's when she noticed something surprising. "Mike?" she said softly, noticing I still had energy left. "How is this possible?" I shrugged. "It's just how things are," I said. She reached out and touched my hand. "But I'm sure I felt you finish earlier." "You did," I replied with a quiet laugh. The unique environment of Mars had its effects, and it seemed there was more to come. "That doesn't mean I can't keep going," I said with a smile, helping Elka shift into a more comfortable position. I positioned myself behind her, keeping the moment steady and relaxed. Elka seemed surprised, her breath catching. "Mike, I can't believe it. You're still going," she said, her voice filled with wonder. I didn't bother explaining that the lower gravity helped with recovery. It was clear she was enjoying the moment, and there was no reason to interrupt it with explanations. I moved at a steady pace, finding a rhythm we both enjoyed. Elka leaned forward, bracing herself against the wall, and began moving with me. The reduced gravity made everything feel lighter and more effortless, allowing her to move in ways that wouldn't be possible on Earth. As we continued, I reached forward, gently adding to her experience by making sure she was comfortable and enjoying every second. She responded in soft, quiet whispers, speaking in German, which added a sense of mystery to the moment. I didn't understand what she was saying, but it was clear she was deeply involved in what we were sharing. After a while, she paused, catching her breath, but soon continued with even more enthusiasm. I could tell she was enjoying herself, and I started wondering how much longer we could continue. Elka, with her strength and stamina, seemed ready to keep going. Before long, she let out a quiet sigh, showing she was nearing her limit. Sensing that it was time, I shifted my focus to making sure we ended this shared moment on a high note. It didn't take long before I, too, reached my limit, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Elka collapsed forward, lying on her stomach. "Wow. Just wow," she said, catching her breath. "I don't know if I've ever felt something like this before. It's all you," I said with a chuckle. She rolled to her side, wrapping her arms around me and looking up with a content smile. "Mike, I don't know if I've said this enough, but that was something special. I can't remember the last time I felt so connected." "If you're trying to boost my confidence, it's working," I joked, feeling a sense of satisfaction from her words. Elka giggled softly, her joy obvious. "I want to spend more time making sure you feel this good, Mike. Will you let me?" she asked with a playful smile, clearly happy and relaxed. The moment was filled with warmth and contentment, the kind of connection that felt effortless and genuine, and I could tell this was something we both appreciated after so much time in isolation. Elka smiled playfully and said, "I'll bet he'd like that." From that point on, Elka began playfully referring to me as Big Mikey. Before you get the wrong impression, I should clarify that I'm pretty average when it comes to size. The best compliment I've gotten was from Adeline, who once said I had a Goldilocks situation, not too big, not too small, just right. Elka's playful nickname was her way of keeping the mood light, and though we were in an unusual situation, her enthusiasm made things feel less awkward. It was impossible to ignore that I was spending time with my fiancé's best friend, which added a layer of complexity to everything. Elka, I would love for us to continue spending time together like this, I said honestly. But there's something I think you should know. As much as I appreciate the compliments, I have to be upfront. What we experienced isn't just because of me. It's Mars. The reduced gravity changes things, making everything feel easier and more comfortable. It's not just about strength. It's about how gravity affects our bodies. We don't get as tired, we can move more freely, and things just flow better. I think that's why things feel so different here. It's easier for the body to do what it needs to do. Elka nodded, understanding. I get what you're saying, Mike. That actually makes a lot of sense. She smiled as we talked, continuing to rest her hand gently on me. There was a natural warmth between us, and it felt good to be open and honest about what we were experiencing, even though the situation was far from normal. So, you're saying it's easier for you because of Mars, Elka said with a grin. Well, don't sell yourself short, I replied. You're an incredible person to be around, and that definitely plays a part. And since we both have more energy and endurance here, we could spend more time together, right? She asked. If that's what you want, I said. She looked at me with a knowing smile. That's exactly what I want. With that, she shifted closer, making it clear that she wanted to enjoy the moment again. It felt natural and easy, just like everything else in this new world we were living in, where gravity wasn't the only thing making things lighter. Elka moved slowly and gracefully, showing she was in control, and there was no need to rush. As she leaned forward, I could reach out and hold her close, feeling a calm, steady connection between us. There was a peaceful expression on her face, and I knew she was enjoying every moment, wanting this time together to last. Since we had already shared a strong connection earlier, there was no urgency. We were both content to take our time, enjoying the closeness without any pressure. Throughout the night, we spent more time together, and the next morning, we shared another quiet, meaningful moment. As I prepared to leave her quarters, I tried to be discreet, but Elka noticed and smiled. I'm pretty sure everyone knows you stayed here, she said with a smirk. I doubt we were as quiet as you think. Yeah, you're probably right, I admitted, but maybe I can still sneak back without being seen. Good luck with that, she said, laughing. The following days were a bit strange. Many of our colleagues in the settlement gave me curious looks, as if they knew what had happened between Elke and me. It seemed like word had spread quickly, and people couldn't stop thinking about it. Only one person actually brought it up. Al Simonson, who worked on the water reclamation team, approached me while we were working on wiring up a pump. Mike, can I ask you something? Al said. Sure, what's up? I replied. You know Jane Albertson, right? She's my girlfriend. Yeah, I've heard. Jane's great. You're lucky, I said. Yeah, about that. There's someone else, let's call her Rita, who's offered to, well, become more involved with me, Al said. And why are you telling me this? I asked. I've heard through the grapevine that you've had some experience navigating this kind of situation, Al said. Seriously, though, I like Rita. When she asked, I was, let's just say, very flattered. But I'm committed to Jane and don't want to hurt her. Look, if you think you can keep something like that quiet here, forget it, I said. Everyone would know in no time. I wouldn't try to hide it, Al said. I wouldn't even consider doing something like that back on Earth, much less here on Mars. Smart thinking, I replied. So what's your plan? You have an interest in Rita, but you don't want to betray Jane's trust. I know someone who went through something similar not long ago. That's why I'm asking you, Al said. Listen, there's no way you can do anything without Jane's say-so, I replied. It seems simple to me. You can either say no to Rita or talk to Jane and see how she feels. I didn't even think about being with Elka until Adeline mentioned it. What? Adeline suggested it? Are you serious? Al exclaimed. Yeah, I think if you think about it, it makes sense. Elka is Adeline's closest friend here. You've probably seen that the women here are feeling lonely. Adeline wanted to help her friend, so she brought it up. I'm not the smartest person around, but I wouldn't go to Adeline and say, "Hey, want to hear about my new idea? It involves your friend." No way. Adeline came to me with it. After I said yes, she spoke to Elka. Then everything moved forward. Wow, Al said. I didn't know that. Mike, people are saying you're quite the charmer. Your story makes more sense now. Thanks, I think, I replied. Jane has mentioned she feels for the women who don't have partners. She's been very open about how she feels for me. Ah, by open, I guess you mean she's shown her appreciation in certain ways, I said. I can't say yes or no to that, Al replied. We finished lunch and knew we had to get back to our work. Al, I have a bold idea, I said. You've got my full attention, Al replied. I suggest you be completely honest with Jane. Imagine approaching her and saying, "Something happened, and I want you to hear it from me first." It might be best not to mention that you're interested in spending time with Rita. Just explain what Rita said. You could also say you'd never do anything without Jane knowing. Then I could see how she reacts. Jane is smart. She'll understand you're ready to be loyal, but if she feels for her friends, she has a chance to help. I could tell Jane she'll always be the only woman I love, Al said. Great idea. Women appreciate hearing those kinds of words, even if it involves them allowing their partners to be with someone like Rita, I said. Mike, do you mind if I tell Jane it was Adeline who suggested you spend time with Elka? I paused, wondering if Adeline would be all right with that. I was pretty sure she wouldn't mind, but I didn't want to upset her. Let me ask Adeline, I said. This seems like something you should do quickly before Jane hears that Rita wants to take her man. I'll let you know this afternoon so you can talk to Jane tonight. I knew I could rely on you, Al said. If you ever need some extra help, just ask me. I'll do that, I replied. Sometimes I could use a little assistance. Everyone around here knows that, Mike, Al said with a smile. Since Al was in a hurry, I went to find Adeline right away. She was in her greenhouse showing someone how to use the watering system. Hey, I need you for a minute, I said. There are too many people here, she replied. We can't have any private moments until later. Always joking, I said. Correct. It's comedienne, she added playfully. Al Simonson has a problem you should know about, I told her. I explained Al's situation and asked if it was okay for him to tell Jane that Adeline was the one who suggested I spend time with Elka. Of course he can do that, Adeline said. Mike, I've already talked to a few girls about encouraging you to spend time with Elka. We need to be honest. People shouldn't think you are untrustworthy. They shouldn't believe Elka is trying to cause trouble. They can't think I don't see what's happening. Didn't you realize this? I guess I didn't think about it enough, I admitted. There's no real privacy here, Adeline said. I'm sure Elka has mentioned to others that she is happy I made the suggestion. She's our commander, and she knows that keeping secrets can cause issues. Being honest changes your situation from something sneaky to something kind. I'm surprised you needed my approval. As you know, I can be a bit clueless, I said. Yes, but you are my clueless one, she said, kissing my cheek. Mine, completely. And also Elka's, I added lightly. Must you always argue, Canada boy? Adeline asked. I sent Al a text and then returned to my work. I didn't think about it again until the next day when I saw Al while I was fixing some equipment at the water plant. How did your talk with Jane go? I asked. She didn't get angry with me, Al replied. At first she was upset, but she was glad I told her directly instead of her hearing it from someone else. Thanks for suggesting that. No problem. My grandpa always said that honesty is important, I said. Your grandpa sounds like a wise man, Al said. Grandma had her doubts, but what happened with Jane? What did she think? I spent the night with Rita. Jane wasn't thrilled at first, but she felt sorry for Rita, so everything is good. I could share everything about my night with Rita, but it goes without saying that it's best not to discuss such things. So true. I'm not going to explain the noise people hear when I'm close to either of those women, I said. Well, maybe there's some room to talk about that, Al replied. I remember hearing a loud scream that seemed to come from the commander's room. If you have any thoughts on that, I'd like to hear them. By the way, I can get you an extra shower whenever you want. You did mention that, I said. There's something else, Al continued. Jane wanted to meet Rita, without me there. They seem to be getting along. That's not too surprising. They probably have at least one thing in common, I said. It really caught me off guard, Al said, and it makes me a bit uneasy. What could they possibly talk about? My issues? Other guys who might do better? Ugh. Do you think women tend to share details about their lives more? I asked. I'd ask Grace what people say about me, but she can't share private talks. I saw a movie where someone said, "There are things man is not meant to know." Maybe this is one of those things? Al said. There are several movies that end that way, I said, but I doubt any of them are about life on Mars. By the end of my shift that day, I was very tired. I thought about asking Al for that extra shower. Then I remembered that Adeline liked it when I didn't smell too clean. Even though I felt a bit worn out when I got to her quarters, she noticed as soon as I hugged her. She said, taking a deep breath near my neck. Thank you, Mike. I know you'll be great. Anything for you, my love, I replied. We didn't waste time with small talk. We both wanted to be close, so we started helping each other right away. By this point, Adeline and I knew what made us feel good, so we cuddled up in bed. She held on to me, and I could feel the connection we shared. Adeline said knowing how much I desired her made her feel good about herself. There's no compliment more heartfelt than knowing someone wants you, she told me once. As I think back on that time, I realized that being on Mars let me feel a deeper love for Adeline. I missed so many things from Earth that I couldn't even remember them all. Adeline was everything I loved about home. Being close to her felt like returning to a place filled with joy. I'm really grateful for our love, and it always reminds me that many of our friends don't have the close emotional connections that healthy relationships offer. That night, I closed my eyes and enjoyed how Adeline was touching me. When I felt ready, I sat up and moved her into one of our favorite positions. We had found this way of being close on Mars, and it was a fun change from what we could do on Earth. Let me try to explain it simply. I started by kneeling on the bed and leaning back until I was sitting on my feet. Back then, I was young and could easily bend in different ways. In this position, I pulled Adeline on top of me, holding her close. Think of it like the letter X. My body formed one part of the X, and Adeline made the other part. We were together, enjoying the moment. What made this position special was how I helped Adeline move gently. We used a blanket under her, almost like a swing. I could hold the ends of the blanket, which made it easier for both of us to enjoy being together and share happy moments. This way of being close allowed us to connect in a new way. Adeline felt wonderful, and I was able to really appreciate being with her. The lower gravity on Mars made it easier for us to stay comfortable and enjoy the moment without getting too tired. I loved looking at Adeline's beautiful shape. It felt special, almost like being partners in dance, where she was active in moving and showing her energy. Sometimes when Adeline reached her peak of joy, she would laugh, which made me smile. Other times, she expressed her joy more loudly, filling the room with happiness. After some time, the air was filled with a unique warmth that drew me in, creating a mix of feelings between us. Even though I might not always enjoy it when she had been working hard without freshening up, there was something captivating about being close to her. We usually stayed in that X position until we couldn't hold it anymore. That night, I remember feeling an intense connection that sparked a special energy between us. I gently laid Adeline down on the bed and moved into position beside her. At this point, I was feeling a bit impatient, so I didn't take my time to ease into the moment. I just went right in. Mike, I love being with you, Adeline said. I love being with you too, I replied. I love when you're close to me. I really need that connection. That worked for me. I focused on pacing myself to make the moment last. I wanted Adeline to enjoy it. When she reached her peak again, I felt free to let go, and we experienced that moment of happiness together. Oh, Mike, Adeline said. I care about you so much. I care about you too, I replied. Afterward, we held hands and rested. It was too early to sleep. I thought we would just relax for a bit before continuing to enjoy each other's company. But Adeline surprised me. Elka needs to talk to you, she said. Why don't you go see her? Right now, I asked. I told her I'd send you. I'll stay here and wait for you to come back. It shouldn't take long. What does she want to talk about? I wondered. She'll explain it. Just listen to her, Mike. I'm sure you'll understand what to do. This feels a bit mysterious, I said. You have no idea, Adeline replied with a smile. I had no choice but to get up. I dressed and headed to Elka's room. I thought about how everyone in the settlement probably knew my business by now, but it didn't bother me much anymore. When I reached Elka, I briefly wondered if she had similar thoughts, but that wasn't the case. "Mike, thanks for coming," Elka said as she closed the door behind me. "How are things going? I see that you and your team are ahead on everything." "We've been fortunate," I answered. "That's not just luck. You all have been working hard. Everyone appreciates the progress. I think you all deserve a few days off to recharge. We don't want anyone getting hurt." "Thank you, Elka. That's very kind. I'll suggest a movie night to the team or something." "That sounds good. But what I really wanted to say is how grateful I am that you and Adeline are in my life. You both mean a lot to me." I shared something private with Adeline, and she suggested I talk to you about it. This is really pushing me out of my comfort zone. I hope it doesn't upset you. Upset me? Really? Elka, you can tell me anything. Adeline and I see you as our closest friend. I value our closeness. What do you want to share? Elka took a deep breath. "Mike, I've always had strong feelings. When we became close, it changed everything for me. Since then, I find myself thinking about you a lot. You mean a lot to me." "Well, there's something else about me that no one else on Mars knows except for Adeline. I told her today, and she thought I should share it with you too. She believes you will get it. In the past, I've talked about this with men, and they didn't always understand." I held her hand, trying to reassure her. "You're probably overthinking it, Elka. Whatever you need to say, just say it. If it matters to you, it matters to me." She smiled, though she looked a bit anxious. Then she began to talk. We ended up talking for over an hour, and she even asked me to watch a video that helped clarify things. I was glad she shared this with me. It explained a lot about why Elka is who she is. As our leader, she always seemed so in control and confident. It made sense that she had her own secrets, just like everyone else. "I'm grateful you chose to talk about this, Elka," I said. "I feel closer to you now, and I hope you feel the same way. I want you to know that no one has ever asked me to do something like this before. I'll do my best, and I hope it's enough." "I'm sure it will be more than enough, Mike," she replied, clearly relieved by our conversation. "So we'll give it a try tomorrow," I said. "Tomorrow," Elka agreed. "There might be some readers who may want to skip this particular part. It's a little different, but it's part of my journey in learning about relationships on Mars, and this book wouldn't be complete without it. This story involves my connection with Elka. I want to make it clear that she's okay with me writing about this. She reviewed what I wrote and is comfortable with sharing it. I hope what you've written helps others understand people like me," she said. Imagine me standing in front of Elka's cabin door, feeling really nervous. We had talked for a long time the day before, and she explained what she needed from me. Here's what happened next. Elka opened her door and welcomed me in. "Thank you for coming," she said softly, looking down. "I really need you right now, but I feel I need to make amends for something." "What happened?" I asked, my voice firm. "How did you misbehave this time?" I asked firmly. "I couldn't help it. I broke the rules again," Elka admitted, her tone a little guilty. "What rule did you break?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I couldn't stop thinking about tonight," she confessed. "I knew you were coming and I got carried away." "You knew that wasn't allowed," I said, stepping back and shaking my head. "Why would you go against what we agreed on?" "I'm sorry," she said quietly, lowering her head. I could see that she was looking for reassurance, though. This was a situation where boundaries were important, and it was clear she wanted to feel that structure. But it wasn't easy for me to be harsh, and I didn't want to push things too far. We had a deep trust between us, and I needed to make sure she felt safe in all of this. "Let's reset," I said, taking a step back. "You know what we've talked about?" Elka nodded, her eyes showing understanding. "Go ahead," I said, my voice calm but firm. She carefully removed her uniform and lay down on the bed as instructed. I noticed that she had set things up ahead of time, preparing for this moment. She had used simple items we had access to in the base, creating a space that gave her the sense of security she needed. I tied her wrists gently with the cables she had provided, making sure she was comfortable. Everything was done with care, and I could see that she trusted me completely. This was about her feeling safe in letting go, and I wanted to honor that. "I trust you," she said softly. I gave her a nod and continued with the gentle roll we had agreed on. Though this situation was far from what I was used to, I understood that this was what she needed to feel grounded. I stayed focused, never crossing any boundaries. Elka played her part, asking for things to be toned down, but we both knew she felt reassured by the process. It wasn't about causing pain, it was about trust, and I followed her lead, listening to her every cue. In the end, it was clear that she felt a deep sense of release, not from any physical action, but from the emotional connection and the trust we had built together. This was her way of feeling empowered in a vulnerable moment, and I made sure she knew she was in control the whole time. As she relaxed afterward, I loosened the ties and sat beside her, making sure she felt safe and supported. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice full of relief. I smiled and nodded, glad that I could be there for her in the way she needed, without ever crossing a line. Elka was firm in her belief that she needed my help, and I was the only one she could turn to on Mars. "Please, I can't take any more," she said. "Please let me go." This was her way of telling me she was ready for something more. "I hope you've understood," I replied. "Next time I visit, I expect you to be prepared." "I will, I promise," Elka said as I released her hands. She turned to face me, her eyes sleepy, and asked me to remove my uniform. I changed out of my clothes. Elka seemed excited, but I wasn't feeling any spark. "I'll get you in the mood," she said, moving closer to me. Her enthusiasm was surprising. She looked into my eyes and seemed eager. She mentioned wanting a certain kind of experience, and I could see she felt strongly about it. I continued to wait for her cue to slow down, but she seemed to enjoy what was happening. Finally, she took a deep breath and spoke the words I had been waiting for. "Please, I want you now," she softly urged. I moved her back on the bed and positioned myself. "Make sure it's good," I said. "I'll try my best," she whispered. I took my time, focusing on the moment and her feelings. She responded quickly, and while it wasn't the same as previous times, it was genuine and heartfelt. She expressed her excitement, and despite some discomfort from earlier, there was a sense of connection. Due to the differences on Mars, things felt different compared to Earth, but I endeavored to make the best of it, and I could tell she was enjoying the experience. We spent a long while together, feeling connected and engaged. Elka told me that she enjoyed being in a situation where I took the lead, and that when we spent time together, it allowed her to imagine I only cared about her happiness. She experienced pleasure several times, and while each moment wasn't overwhelming, they helped me feel that she liked what we were doing. Later, Elka explained that the purpose of our time together wasn't just to create intense pleasure. What she really wanted was to feel like she was in a story where a strong person was in charge, and she could let go of her own power and just relax. It's important to know that in her everyday life, Elka is a very strong leader. She is responsible for many people on Mars, and her job requires her to be in control all day long. This fantasy gave her a way to release some of that stress. She had partners back on Earth who understood this need of hers, but when she arrived on Mars, they weren't there. At first, she thought she would wait until she went back to Earth to find that kind of connection again. But as time went on, the demands of her job became too much for her. I felt glad that she was open to asking me to help her, even though this was new for me. I'm happy to say that I improved with time. After our first night together, Elka thanked me warmly. We lay side by side and she cuddled up to me, whispering kind words. "You are so good to me," she said. "You make me feel special. You guide me when I need it. Thank you for everything. Please don't stop helping me." In the weeks that followed, we spent time together in ways that felt more typical most of the time. Elka didn't like calling it normal, because that suggested what we did on the nights I was more dominant was not. She reminded me that many people enjoy this dynamic, and it can be a common way for those in charge to unwind. I found enjoyment in it too. When I guided Elka, she would move playfully and make little sounds. I could sense that she liked the excitement, and I took joy in discovering how to make her feel good. She never reached a great high just from that, but she sometimes came close, and I felt pleased that I could bring her that joy. As time went on, my feelings for Elka grew stronger. I started to feel like I was her partner, and I wanted to make her happy. Since I enjoy reading, I looked up more about these dynamics and came up with a little surprise for her. In my research, I learned that some people enjoy gentle sensations from special devices. Through some research, I learned how to build a small device that could add a new level of excitement. I gathered the parts I needed from the electronics lab and put it together, ready to surprise Elka. When I arrived at her cabin that evening, I had the device tucked away, and Elka didn't know that tonight would be different. I gently tied her wrists to the headboard, and for the first time I added a blindfold over her eyes. "What's happening?" she asked, her voice curious. "Just relax," I said, keeping the mood light but playful. I gently touched her cheek, a signal that this evening would involve new experiences. She later told me how the blindfold made everything feel more intense since she couldn't predict what would happen next. Once she was comfortable, I placed a pillow under her for support. This allowed us to enjoy the moment without either of us feeling strained. The blindfold added to the sense of anticipation, creating a fun and playful atmosphere. "I'm a little nervous," Elka said, though we both knew she trusted me. It was part of the playful dynamic we shared. She knew I had her best interests at heart and that everything was safe. As I sat beside her, I admired how relaxed and open she was to trying new things. I wanted to surprise her with the small device I had made, designed to add a gentle sensation, and see if she enjoyed the experience. I started by placing the device lightly on her foot, which caused her to gasp slightly. "Oh," she said, surprised by the new feeling. Without saying much, I moved the device up to her leg, where it made her muscles twitch, again catching her off guard. Each time I paused, I gave her time to adjust and anticipate what might happen next, which seemed to make her even more curious. Elka responded with a mix of surprise and excitement as I continued, but always within the boundaries we had set together. Her trust and the care I took made sure that the experience was enjoyable for both of us. The playful back and forth continued, and it was clear that she appreciated the effort I had put into making the evening special. As the night went on, I worked my way gently up her body, using the device to add small surprises here and there. We shared a fun and light-hearted experience, and the new element made it clear that we could continue to explore and try new things together, always respecting each other's limits. By this time, Elka seemed filled with anticipation about what was coming next. She let out a soft, contented sigh as I continued, reacting to the sensations I was providing. I moved from one side to the other, ensuring she was comfortable while building up the tension. She responded with quiet murmurs, showing that she was enjoying the moment. Elka was clearly fully immersed in the experience, and as I continued, it became clear that she was ready for the next step. Wanting to make sure she felt comfortable and cared for, I kept the atmosphere light and thoughtful, taking my time. Throughout, I maintained a steady pace, making sure everything flowed naturally. Elka's reactions indicated she was fully engaged, and I knew we were sharing something special. There was no rush, just a sense of connection and trust. As the night progressed, I could tell that Elka was fully at ease, trusting me to guide the moment. She occasionally whispered softly, expressing how much she appreciated the care and attention to detail. Each moment felt like a continuation of the last, a shared experience built on trust and mutual understanding. When the time finally came for the next step, I made sure to keep the pace gentle and unhurried, giving her the time to adjust and savor the moment. Elka, still wearing the blindfold, seemed comfortable with everything, and I considered removing it, but decided to leave it in place to maintain the sense of focus. She responded with quiet encouragement, showing her eagerness to continue, but I was in no hurry. We both enjoyed the shared connection, and I was determined to make sure Elka felt fully cared for throughout. As we continued, Elka reacted strongly, clearly enjoying the playful teasing and the gentle pace I maintained. Her reactions confirmed that this approach worked well, and it became clear that she appreciated the extra care and attention. By the end, I felt a sense of fulfillment knowing that Elka had been completely satisfied. We maintained a slow and steady rhythm, savoring the connection without rushing, and it was clear that she felt both relaxed and happy. The entire experience felt natural, thoughtful, and meaningful for both of us. I started to think about how many times I could push Elka's limits. Being on Mars, where gravity was lighter, made it easier to keep going. Eventually, I noticed Elka looked tired. She was still reaching her high points, but her movements were not as strong. By this point, I felt ready to find my own satisfaction. so I waited until I thought she was close, then I let myself feel good too. We had enjoyed our time together and our moments felt special because they happened at the same time. Elka lay on her back, taking deep breaths to relax. I gently unfastened her and she took off her blindfold. "Wow," she said. "Where did you get that toy, Mike?" "I made it myself," I replied. "How did you know how to do that?" she asked. "Think about it. I'm an electrical engineer, that's what I do. I hope you liked it." "I loved it," she said. "Did you make it just for me?" "I don't know anyone else who would enjoy that," I answered. "I care a lot about you, Elka. I want to be the best partner you've ever had. I often think about what makes you happy. If you want me to create anything else, just let me know." Elka laughed. "I never realized how great it is to have a boyfriend who is an electrical engineer." Hearing her call me her boyfriend brought me joy, even more than our previous moments together. By then, Elka, Adeline, and I felt like a close-knit group. While we hadn't talked about it yet, we understood our feelings for one another were becoming stronger, even beyond our mission. Adeline and I had plans to get married and start a family after we returned to Earth. None of us were sure how Elka would fit into those plans. I didn't bring it up because I wanted us to enjoy the present and let our relationships develop naturally. Nowadays, some places allowed for more than one partner, and I started to think that we could have that kind of relationship in the future. I will admit, this made me feel good about myself. Being loved by two amazing women made me feel very lucky. I knew I had to work hard to make things good for all of us. For me, that meant treating Adeline and Elka like queens. This thought reminded me of classic stories about a man named John Carter who travels to Mars and meets many interesting characters. His most important relationship is with a Martian princess named Dejah Thoris. They fall in love and get married. I read those books when I was young, and the stories about love from other planets were very exciting for me back then. I can't help but think how I would have felt if I had known that one day I would care for two Martian princesses at the same time. I've been hesitant to write this part because it brings back memories that are both joyful and sad. To start, I was someone who often got to go outside. Since the solar panels were outside, my team and I sometimes wore spacesuits and worked under the sun. It was a nice change. Most of our time was spent in a small, cramped space, and many of my colleagues envied those of us who got to work outside regularly. Many of my outdoor shifts were with an engineer named Agatha Turnbull. We quickly became close friends. Agatha was always kind, generous, and hopeful. She never seemed upset about anything and always had something nice to say. I should admit that I was drawn to Agatha from the start. She had a unique beauty that I had never encountered before. Agatha grew up in the Virgin Islands. I've heard that the name Turnbull is well known there because her family has a long history of wealth and influence in business and politics. Her parents provided her with everything she needed to succeed, and she made the most of it. She was an exceptional student and athlete. If you look her up, you can find that she won a bronze medal in gymnastics in the 2038 Games in Panama City. She received her undergraduate degree from Harvard and then went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for her graduate studies in electrical engineering. For her thesis, Agatha designed a compact control system to improve the efficiency and safety of solar panels. Her work earned her patents that caught the eye of investors, leading to a successful startup that produced equipment based on her designs. NASA chose Agatha's company to create the control system for our solar array. She eagerly joined the team that set up and maintained the Martian energy grid, and it would be hard to find anyone on Earth more qualified for that role. By now, you know Agatha was an intelligent and skilled woman. I've mentioned that she was kind and generous, but what I haven't said is that she was one of the most striking women I've ever met. The Virgin Islands are home to many people of African descent. Agatha was black, but her appearance was different from most black people on Mars, who are mostly of mixed heritage and have a range of skin tones. Agatha had the richest, deepest skin tone I had ever seen. It was smooth, dark, and shiny. She had distinct features, with big eyes, a wide nose that fit her face just right, and a big smile that was always there. Her white teeth stood out against her dark skin every time she grinned. Agatha could have been a model if she hadn't been so busy as an Olympic athlete and a brilliant electronics expert wanting to explore Mars. When I first met Agatha, her long black hair flowed down to her shoulders. It was beautiful. She surprised everyone by shaving her head the day before we left. Agatha said it took a lot of money and time to make her hair straight and neat, and she knew there would be no hair salons on Mars. She decided to let her hair grow naturally. She liked the idea of cutting off her long hair to show that starting a new life on Mars meant leaving some parts of her old life behind. Agatha kept her hair short, leaving it looking soft and shiny. I liked her almost right away. Our friendship was close, but it was easy to think that any guy would be lucky to be with her. We spent long hours outside in our spacesuits, unpacking and putting together solar panels like they were from a furniture store. "We are going to be very popular tonight, Mike," Agatha said one afternoon as we connected a new part of the solar array. "Adding this many solar panels is going to boost our power a lot. People who have been waiting to get important work done will be happy to see more power available." "Yeah, but that depends on everything working correctly," I replied. "Though I can't picture anything going wrong. This equipment is almost foolproof. The person who designed this is clearly very smart. Just in case you didn't get the joke, remember that Agatha designed the equipment." "You say nice things," she replied. "Thanks for noticing," I said. Those long hours outside were tiring. We often ended up covered in dust from head to toe. Everything you've heard about Martian dust is true. It gets everywhere. We worked hard to keep it out of our living space, but no matter what we did, we had to keep cleaning up. The most important task was to clean our spacesuits as well as we could before going back inside. The astronauts on the moon used small brooms to try to keep moon dust away. We had a better method. Since Mars has an atmosphere, we used a machine that provided pressurized air through a hose. This allowed us to blast away dust whenever we wanted. Using this method, we got rid of almost all the dust before entering the airlock. Even after we took off our suits, we often found a bit of dust on them. We had to make sure to clean them before going back to the main area. Unfortunately, some of that dust still got inside, and we needed to clean it up. I have to mention Hoover, one of the sponsors of the Mars colony. Their little robotic vacuum cleaners moved around inside the area at night, helping to keep our living space tidy. One afternoon, Agatha and I met to talk about changes to our schedule. Work was going faster than we thought on what was called the second floor addition. The builders of the Mars base decided to add a second floor to make the compound safer from radiation and small space rocks. The most exciting part of the plan was the swimming pool they wanted to add up there. It would be a place to store extra water for emergencies, but we would also be allowed to swim. Having 2 meters of water above our living space would help protect us from harmful radiation. The team working on the second floor addition was ahead of schedule. The walls were up and the area was filled with air, but they were stuck because no one had connected the lights and power outlets. They were tired of using battery-powered lights. Agatha and I were supposed to handle the wiring eventually, and we were being asked to start sooner than planned. As we discussed when we could do the job, Agatha said there was something else on her mind. "Mike, I think you know I have feelings for you," she said. "I think about you a lot." I had realized it. It was hard to hide feelings like that on Mars. I noticed Agatha was acting differently towards me. "I have feelings for you too," I replied. "But you know I'm in a committed relationship with Adeline." "That's true," she said. "But you also have a relationship with Elke, right? There are already 2 women in your life who care about you and you care about them." There was no need to hide the truth. "Yes, my life is complicated," I admitted. "Not too complicated. They care about you and you care about them. But I care about you too. I want to be closer to you. I promise I'll support you without causing issues in your life." And that was how our conversation began. It was clear to Agatha that I had feelings for her too. She started sitting very close to me while we worked, and I encouraged that. I found myself thinking about how wonderful she was as a person. I had often thought about what it would be like to be close to her. You might be curious how I could think about one woman while being with 2 others. I can't really explain it. Looking back, I realized that the more I was with someone, the more I wanted to be close to them. There was something about being on Mars during that time that made everyone yearn for connection. If you knew Agatha, you would understand my feelings. It was hard for me to keep our relationship just professional. Neither of us wanted that. "I'm not sure what to say, Agatha," I told her. "This is happening very quickly." "Just say yes. Say you'll be with me," she replied. Ask Adeline. If you tell her how we feel about each other, I'm sure she'll understand. In my experience, people are often open-minded about these things. I felt Agatha was right. I believed Adeline would agree. I'll talk to her, I promise, I said. Adeline wasn't shocked when I told her that Agatha wanted a closer relationship with me. You're her boss, right? Adeline asked. Will there be any issues if you get involved with someone who works for you? I think it won't be much different from being with the commander, I said. Yes, it's the same, Adeline said. Adeline supported my relationship with Agatha. I had grown used to the idea of being close to more than one woman, so I felt eager to visit Agatha's room for the first time. She greeted me with a warm smile when she opened the door. Seeing that made me feel good about myself. I wanted to make sure she was happy that I came. We quickly found ourselves getting comfortable, and I admired Agatha's beautiful dark skin. My hand looked very light against her. I noticed her unique features, which made me appreciate her even more. By now, you know that I find joy in connecting with a woman's presence. Each woman is different, but Agatha had something special. I can't quite explain what it felt like, but being close to her sparked something deep inside me. Agatha had a distinct aroma. I took in the moment as I connected with her, fully enjoying the experience. My words can't truly express how much Agatha captivated me. One thing that set Agatha apart was her calm nature. Most of the women I met on Mars were strong and confident, wanting to be treated as equals. That was what I had grown accustomed to and preferred. Then I met Agatha. Agatha had her ways of letting me know she wanted me to take charge. I was her boss at work, and she hoped I could carry that over into our personal life. It took me a while to understand this, but soon enough, I was taking the lead with her, feeling confident in our connection. In truth, I was really fond of Agatha, and I would have done anything she asked. However, she wanted me to act as if I were strong and in control, making her feel supported. So that's what I strived to give her. Our first night together felt special because Agatha had been without closeness for a while. I could tell she was eager for more. After some time, I noticed she was tiring, so I relaxed as she cuddled next to me. It wasn't long before she noticed I still had energy. You finished, right? She asked. Yes, and it was great, I replied. Then why are you still ready? She wondered. It seems there are some differences with gravity here, I explained lightly. I realized she hadn't heard about how things worked differently on Mars. She playfully touched my arm and smiled. So you could go again? Of course, I said, but let's take a little break first. I don't need a break, she replied. Let me take the lead. With that, Agatha climbed over me, confident and excited. She smiled bright and moved happily, bringing us both joy. Does this feel good? She asked. It feels wonderful. You're amazing, I told her. I'm happy to do whatever you like, she said with a grin. I appreciated her enthusiasm. As I looked at her, I admired her fit body and bright smile, feeling fortunate to share this moment. After a bit, Agatha found her own rhythm. She looked delighted, realizing how easy it was to keep going in the lighter gravity. I remembered a time when I had a similar experience, feeling the joy of connection last longer than usual. It became clear that Agatha wanted to continue sharing our moments together, enjoying our time and keeping our energy alive longer than most people might experience back on Earth. I lay on the bed and tried to relax, focusing on keeping calm. Agatha wanted to enjoy a slow, cozy time together, and my job was to stay ready for her. It took longer than I thought. In our personal cabins, there were small screens on the walls. They showed the time when not used for anything else. I could see the clock over Agatha's shoulder while she was on top of me. As time passed, 10 minutes, then 20, then 30, it became harder to hold back my feelings. Watching Agatha move above me was very exciting. I noticed her skin started to glisten as she worked up a sweat. It was interesting to see how droplets formed on her chest and then rolled down gently. Agatha was breathing deeply, and it felt like I was watching a captivating scene unfold. After about 45 minutes, I remembered that Agatha was an amazing athlete and had won an Olympic medal. If we were having a contest of endurance, I knew she would win. I felt like I really needed a break, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold on for her. That's when I reached down and gently touched her skin. She immediately reacted, her excitement growing. Maybe she could tell I needed a pause soon. For a moment, Agatha had a big, joyful response as she moved with energy. She closed her eyes and tilted her head back, relaxing completely. It wasn't as intense as earlier moments we had shared, but she looked pleased. Agatha leaned forward, resting on me comfortably, and I didn't mind at all. It felt nice to have her close. After a little while, I realized Agatha had dozed off. On Earth, that might have been a bit awkward, but on Mars, her light weight made it easy for her to rest on me. I covered her with a blanket and fell asleep too. A few hours later, I felt her getting up. I opened my eyes and saw her big, bright smile. "That was different," she said. "Different in a good way." "It's easier here," I replied. "There are so many more ways to enjoy it. You'll see." "I can't wait to explore that," she said with a grin. The next morning, we were set to work outside, connecting wires to add more batteries to the solar array. It felt nice to be beside her, quietly remembering the special time we had shared the day before. Our shift went by quickly, and when we finished, we walked back to the airlock to clean our suits and take them off. Underneath our suits, we wore something like long underwear. This layer had wires in it, which kept us warm in the freezing temperatures outside. By the time we took off our suits, we were tired, so we sat together on a bench to rest before taking off the thermal layer. Agatha held my hand. "I care about you, Mike," she said. "I felt this way for a long time. My mother always told me that the best moments happen when you really love someone. Yesterday was the first time I shared a special moment with someone I love. Now I see she was right." "I care about you too, Agatha," I replied. "I know this is all happening quickly, but I think I started to fall for you the day we met." Agatha and I began to meet regularly at her cabin, spending time sharing our thoughts and feelings. It all seemed perfect, but I often thought about how I was deeply in love with 3 women. I wanted all of them in my life forever, but I knew that couldn't happen. It felt like someday Elka and Agatha would leave. Of course, I loved Adeline, and I planned to have a future with her, but I didn't like thinking about how my other relationships might not last. I tried to focus on the present, but that worry was hard to shake off. Looking back, I see that Mars changed me. Living on Mars made me a different person. At that time, we all felt a strong sense of homesickness. It was deeper than just missing home. There was an incident that happened which showed us what we were going through. I wasn't there, but Adeline saw it and told me everything. To understand, you should know that the best viewing window in the base was in the cafeteria. It was nice to eat while looking at the strange landscape outside. People often gathered there to watch the sunset and the stars appear. The view of the night sky on Mars was very clear, with less atmosphere and light to block the stars. One night, a group of over a dozen people was watching as the skies darkened and Earth became visible. That blue-white planet stands out in the night sky. We all took a moment to look at Earth and think about what we had left behind. On that night, a woman named Mary McCaffrey was staring at Earth when she started to cry. Some friends moved closer to comfort her, and soon they were all crying together. Most of the people in the cafeteria joined them. Adeline told me she didn't cry, but she felt a deep sadness in her heart. We all understood something significant was happening to us. None of us really understood what was going on. "Things are getting out of hand," Grace said when I asked her about it. "A lot is happening. Bad things. The people on this base are some of the strongest individuals ever, but they are being pushed too far. No one has ever been this far from Earth for this long. We are in a place we don't know. You are all feeling the effects of a new kind of stress. Being taken away from Earth is hard for everyone. Very few people truly understand what it means to feel this way. Most think that those who experience trauma can eventually heal, but the truth is, you never fully recover. Instead, trauma changes who you are. You have to find a way to live with what has happened to you. Mike, you and the others are changing, changes that no one has experienced before. You are becoming part of this new world. Some people here are struggling. I can't predict where this is going, but I can tell you one thing. Mike, I am worried. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.